and I had a sparkling hot tea. It was pretty good. Yeah.
Carbonation with
No,
water.
you don't. But I was like, I want to cool it down a little. Add a little lemon flavor.
Pretty creative.
Yeah, I think it like absorbs into my system faster than usual.
It's innovative. Did you get back to you share that with
Wow, that's a pretty robust schedule.
It is.
Yeah, I requested funds from the city manager to pilot a new tea drink.
Are you getting this?
Well, there you go.
Alto staff?
Yes.
Exactly.
I'd like to call to order the Policy and Services Committee meeting Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Klein. Chair Price.
Here?
Councilmember Sharp.
Here.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
4 present.
Thank you. Oral communications. If there are any members of the public here who would like to speak to items not on the agenda, please put up your speaker card. Okay, seeing no one, I'll proceed to agenda item number 1. Report on status of audit recommendations, June 2004. And we have our esteemed city auditor with us tonight. If you would like to give the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Harriet Richardson from the City Auditor's Office. I'm here to present our annual report on the implementation status of audit recommendations made in completed audits. As of June 30th, 2014, there were 86 open recommendations from 10 audit reports. During the past year, city staff completed 38, or 76% of the 50 recommendations that were open as of June 30th, 2013, and 4 of the 36 recommendations were made in audits we issued in fiscal year 2014. City staff had made progress on 39 of the open recommendations and had not yet started to implement 5 recommendations that we issued late in fiscal year 2014. Departments expect to complete 37 of the 44 remaining open recommendations by the end of calendar year 2014 and the remaining 7 by the end of the fiscal year. Staff in my office reviewed the department's responses for all of the completed recommendations to ensure that the implementation met the intent of the original recommendation. In some instances, departments implemented alternative measures to accomplish the intent of a recommendation, which we also verified. I've provided you with a summary of the status of recommendations for each audit with open recommendations. The details of each recommendation, including the department's current and previous responses, are included in Attachment A. I'm not going to go through each of these in detail at this point unless you would like me to allow sufficient time for questions regarding individual audits and the recommendations. However, I would like to point out that the Finance Committee requested a detailed update on the inventory management audit when we presented that audit to them, and staff from several departments will be providing that update on October 7th. The information from that update will subsequently be provided to the full council. And that concludes my initial comments and opening it up for comments on specific audits.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, questions, comments? Councilmember Klein?
Well, I hear the numbers. Time to hear an evaluation. Now, do you think this is good, bad, or indifferent?
I think that the numbers are good. 76% is good progress. Last year, there was I think it was only like 16 recommendations have been implemented during the year, and several of these are some old audits, 2008, 2010, 2012, and significant progress was made on those older audits. There was one audit where that was issued in this past fiscal year that for utilities reserves, where all the recommendations were implemented, and the employee benefits audit, People's Strategy and Operations implemented all 20 of those recommendations within the past year. So overall, I think it's good. There's still work to be done to complete the last ones, but I think the progress being made is commendable. The details show that there is significant work being done on all of the open recommendations.
Well, as we've discussed with you before, some recommendations are more important than other recommendations. So just looking at what you might regard as important recommendations, do you think that there's any that are lagging?
No, I think that I think some of the really important recommendations were in the inventory management audit, and that one, even though it shows a lot of them in progress, a lot of work has been done since June 30th, and that update will provide that information. Also, on the ethics policies, significant work has been done. The executive leadership team has reviewed a draft ethics policy, and it's very close to being finalized, and I think that one is significant to ensure that employees understand what's important and how they behave. So I would consider those two of the most important ones. Also, the SAP security audit is pretty significant, and that one only has one audit recommendation remaining open.
Good, thank you.
Yes, and I have a quick question about the format and the organization of materials in Attachment A. If it says that, this is a general comment, if it says that the status is complete,
Yes.
and then in the next line it says original target date, and it gives, in most cases, a date, and then the next column is revised target date and status. Now, complete means the response from the subject department is complete, but it looks like there's ongoing work to be done, like the 2004 management update, 2014 management update. If you could just clarify the
Sure.
two columns on the right.
Sure. So the current status, if it says complete, it means the item is closed, the recommendation is closed. Complete has been the term that's been used in past years, and we remain consistent with that. The original target date was the target that was provided in the audit response, and maybe it would have made more sense for the future to reverse those two columns. Revised target date, if an audit is complete, you'll see an A there, meaning that there is no revised target date. And the update, the 2014 update, is the update for this report. What I was trying to do was consolidate some comments in the past. This was very tiny print. And I was trying to consolidate some columns to make it readable. And so 2000, for example, if you look at the first page, in process, the original target date was June 2008. The revised target date, meaning that the department, the city manager in this case, expects to complete this recommendation by October 30th, 2014. And the 2014 management update states what they're planning to do to complete the recommendation. 2013 or prior years, sometimes it says prior years if there have been multiple responses. We summarized what the previous responses were from prior audit status reports.
Okay, I guess where I'm having a disconnect is that the current status is complete, and yet there's a lot of narrative under the 2014 management update in different ones.
That's to tell you what they did to complete the work or what they've done to date to implement in progress recommendations.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Schmidt?
First, congratulations. As you say in your last sentence, 42 recommendations have been completed during the year, and that anything remaining open will be finished by the end of this year, this fiscal year. That is a dramatic change from past reports where we've been dealing with issues from 5-10 years before. So you are operating in a different way of trying to reach closure on issues outstanding. And that is noticeable. Let me just bring up a couple items. I guess if you turn to packet page 3, page 2, we have the list of 10 audits that have outstanding figures on them. And the first 3 of them are from 4 years and before, and they still have a number of unmet goals. But starting thereafter, you seem to be working very efficiently through the things that have been proposed by the audits and the responses to them. So I just picked out a couple things. If you go to page 36, packet page 36, is just an example. It's the audits on the contract oversight. And it's a page where you have, here's the responses. If you look at the far right column. Do you have the same page numbering idea?
I don't have the packet page numbers, but I found that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do not have the regular page numbers, though. I can't. But just the level of detail that you are giving in your responses and your interpretation of the responses on that was, it makes it easy for a reviewer to see exactly what, in this case, ASD has done, the steps they've taken, and the fact that the auditor has approved and looked over them is a nice model to use. On page 32, 4 pages in front of that, either 31 or 32, these are findings on the employee health benefits. As you go down that page, you have a number of completes, but you just say, review procedures have been established. Now, I guess there's no sense of, how it met the problem you dealt with. Where the ASD material is very detailed in responses. Here you just say, have been established. Now, how do you expect us to interpret that in terms of your oversight?
So for the future, I think that you can look at the 2014 update as what to expect. The previous updates were summaries of old status reports, and we focused on making sure that the detail for this year provides enough information for us to understand that the recommendation was fully implemented. And I do have to give credit to the departments. They provided a lot of detail. We asked for detail, they provided it, and then we decided what to put in the report this year based on me requesting that staff write a brief summary of each recommendation so that we weren't just including counts of what they had done, but we'd make it clearer about what they've done. Prior years, the summaries were briefer, and we just carried those over rather than going back.
So we can anticipate in the future that there will be more
Yes.
interpretation or statements made by the auditor in response to what you had given.
Right. And I also tried to give you this other summary to kind of give you a quick overview of each one.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I guess on page 22, there's an interesting comments and set of audits on SAP security. I know it was an important audit. And there you say that the outcome was a risk assessment of systems. Now, that is, as I understand it, one of your jobs to be doing risk assessment. But you're asking, in this case, the IT department to do a risk assessment. And the confirmation in the last sentence on page 21 is the IT department has confirmed that the security risk assessment will be completed. I guess it has not yet been completed, so your oversight over that hasn't yet taken place.
If a recommendation has not been completed, then we have not yet verified what they are doing. One thing I would like to, I think might be helpful to understand is on risk assessments. Auditors do risk assessments for one purpose, but the standards for internal control require management to do risk assessments of their own functions. It's one of the 5 standards for internal control. And so having IT do a risk assessment of their function is actually a commendable practice because it means that they're assessing their own risk and trying to identify the controls they need to put in place to mitigate those risks before we identify them.
But how do you assess that their risk assessment is good? How do we respond to you?
That would be something that we actually, if you'll recall, I did put in the audit plan next year some training on internal controls, and one of those things would be looking at what they're doing, also training the departments on how to implement a good internal control standards and good internal controls, especially since there's some recently issued revised standards. And as we go in and do our risk assessment in the future, we will be asking questions specifically around those revised standards that will help us make an assessment of where we should audit.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because I guess we see you as a major operator in helping us do risk assessment.
Right, and those new standards were just issued 2 weeks ago, so they're very new.
Okay, one general question on one of the audits, audit number 2, fleet utilization. This started in 2010, and it was a fresh relook at fleet utilization and replacement. Finding number 1 is the city recently avoided spending $2.5 million. You know, there was a major shift that took place at that time in how the city dealt with vehicle use and vehicle replacement. Now, you say this audit is now complete, and I was just a naive council member, went down to the budgets and said, shouldn't I see some budget impact from a major reorganization, done by the vehicle replacement and approved by the auditor that seemed to promise, a new and more efficient way of both purchasing and replacing vehicles. And I've looked at the budget over the last 6 or 7 years, and I don't see much difference. Why wouldn't I find, if this is a successful audit about a major program driving toward efficiencies, why doesn't it show up in our budget?
I probably need to defer the department on that, but I can say that the finding was they avoided spending money So it was money that they didn't spend that they would have spent to replace vehicles in the future. And so you might not see that in the budget if it's an avoidance of an expense that had not yet occurred. So,
But if expenses are going flat or going up, you would expect to see some dip in the rate of increase, or in total expenditure, or in vehicle replacement, capital improvements, somewhere.
yeah.
Well, no, well, in the same way that the council has oversight of the auditor, and the auditor has some degree of oversight of city programs, and the city manager have oversight of the departments, it would be helpful to know what the analysis is that you're pointing to before we try to answer it, Greg, because I don't know if it's a cumulative issue where we've driven down costs in one area, but we have rising costs due to personnel or pension or other costs, or is it in some particular line items? And so it's probably best handled if there's a specific question to really give it to us, and we could get it back to you in writing rather than trying to figure out right here.
Okay, yeah. Let me just state what I did is I went back to fiscal year 2007 and looked at the total budget of the vehicle replacement fund. Was around $7 million at that time. And then I looked at 2008, 10, 12, 14, and 15 budget. And 14 was at 8.5, which is a rate of growth consistent with our overall budget. I looked at the capital improvement budget. I looked at salaries and benefits over the same periods of time. And there was some switching between categories. There was a unique year in 2009 where I think there was some big capital expenditures on property base. But I couldn't find anything in the vehicle expenses that would show a change in the pattern of uses, either capital investment or maintenance costs or outside contracts. So, this was an audit that seemed to promise a change in how vehicle replacement and utilization is going on. It is approved finally now. So you would expect there to be some numbers that would show up.
Councilmember Schmidt, Mike Sarr, Public Works Director. I, like Jim, don't know exactly what you're referring to, and I'm fully prepared to respond to your analysis. But what I can tell you is since the audit, we have gone through a thorough review of underutilized vehicles, the 2,500 mile per year. I don't know the exact numbers, I don't have them in front of me, but we surplus, a number of vehicles. We put another group of vehicles, transport and small transport vehicles, into pools. We eliminated a number of them. So there have been reductions to the fleet. Again, I can't tell you how that translates into the budget document, the capital and the vehicle replacement fund.
Yeah.
I can also tell you, as you may recall, we purchased recently a major fire ladder truck at almost $1 million. So that would go the other direction in terms of budget impact. But that was a replacement and a necessary item to replace an older ladder truck.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's the position I was in as I read through the audit. I said, oh, gee, there should be some impact on this. And I went looking for where to find the impact on a successful audit from 5 years ago.
So I can commit to working with, our fleet review committee consists of Palo Perez and myself, and the assistant city manager who is now vacant. But we can put our heads together and come back and answer any direct questions you might have in writing in the next short-term period of time.
Okay. Would I look for fewer vehicles owned and run by the city now than 5 years ago?
We are reducing the number of vehicles in our fleet. Another area in the audit that we are currently working on is revising our vehicle policy, particularly in terms of vehicles that are assigned to individuals and or taken home. We're looking to reduce that. We also, as we've reported back to the council in capital improvement time, are seriously looking at possibly leasing vehicles in the future rather than replacing them.
Yeah, I remember that.
So that is ongoing. I have to admit it's going a little slower than I had hoped because we've been without a fleet manager for 2 years. And so the good news is we recently found and hired a fleet manager. He's on board, started last month. So we're getting Raul up to speed, and we will be aggressively pursuing the rest of this. In addition to that, we've also recently put in a requisition to purchase 3 electric vehicles and 2 hybrid vehicles, which we have not had in our fleet before, to increase our alternative fuel vehicles.
Yeah. Good, yeah, my only reason for bringing this up is trying to take one example from an important audit that was done 4 years ago now, and 5 years ago almost, and asking the question, can you see the impact of, what that audit decision was. So, yeah, thank you very much for
Oh, you might as well stay up here. I have questions for you.
Councilmember Sharp?
So, Mike, I guess just why did it take 2 years to hire a fleet manager?
That's a very good question. We actually had a pool of applicants about a year ago. We went through the interview process, and the top applicant that we selected ended up turning us down. And then the rest of the pool we didn't feel were up to snuff. Part of the problem with the first procurement is we were looking for specifically fleet managers that had municipal experience. When we went back out again with the new recruitment, we broadened that. The person we hired actually has 25 years as a fleet manager for UPS and also a couple of years with municipal agencies. So that we have to admit we made a mistake in first trying to find somebody that fit our mold, and then when we were unsuccessful, we broadened the search.
Well, I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's just having to adjust to the realities of the marketplace that are out there. So
Yeah, I didn't mean to overstate that, but anyway. So we're confident that Raul Juarez will do a great job for us, and we're moving forward.
And since you're up here, I'm really not picking on you, but you are just up here. And so
okay.
I just...
So everybody else will be reluctant to...
Well, I don't have time to go through all of this, and I don't want to, but since you're up here...
I'm in charge. We'll be civil.
All right.
So the question comes up. If you look at finding number 14, that's on packet page 12, it says... Public Works Fleet Management should routinely review the database inventory for completeness and accuracy and develop necessary processes for departments to provide accuracy and timely utilization data. Okay? And that's still in process, and that was from 2008. So I want you to help me understand what still needs to be done, because when I read the 2014 management update, it actually looks like you've done it. It says Public Works has reviewed the database for accuracy. The upgrade of these will include correct. So we're waiting for an upgrade of a software? Is that? But then if it's an upgrade of a software, why do you need 9 months for it? I mean, it seemed, if you had December 14th, I'd say, okay, finally, they've gotten it together. But it sounds like you've done it when you reach over there. I mean, I can read it to you, but you see it, right?
Oh, I see it right here.
So maybe you just help me understand how that translates to the recommendation and why we got 9 months to complete it.
Well, what I can tell you is that we did upgrade our software last year. It's called Fleet Focus Program. It's a program that we've had in the past. We sent staff out for training over the summer to upgrade and then upgrade the database. So I believe you are correct that, yes, we have done the update as recommended in the finding.
So then why is the target date for completion 6/30/15? I mean, if you finished it, it should say complete. You wouldn't be getting grilled. It'd be like, oh, he's done it.
There's ongoing updates that we need to still do. So
does that mean that there's always going to be ongoing updates, or does that mean... I don't see a list of like, we need to do the following 3 updates, and that's why it's going to take it. What I'm complaining about, frankly, is it looks like you've completed it. You've just said you completed it, but then you say, oh, there's ongoing stuff. Well, does that mean on a regular basis you'll never complete this? And I'm just trying to understand how we know it's complete, because it looks like you've completed it.
Well, I would have to agree. I don't know why this target date of June 15th is shown on here.
Does our auditor know?
We go by the date they provide us when they tell us it's
Yeah.
not complete.
So I'll have to check with my staff to find out why they showed that, because I agree with you. I know in talking with them, they have updated the database, and they are doing a lot of work with Fuel Focus and Fleet Focus software that we have.
Right, well, I appreciate the candor.
Sure.
So I won't ask you any more questions. You're off the hook.
Oh, no, anytime. Sure.
But I guess these are my, thoughts on this. It looks to me like we've had a real problem here in getting these done. And it looks to me like this issue has now pretty much been solved. That, we're on the cusp of having gone through all of these, and that the later audits are actually being implemented timely. So it looks like we had a big problem, we've solved it, and the next one of these should be fairly small. So I just want to make sure that that's actually going to happen, because that's the trajectory it looks like we're on. So I guess I want to know if these dates don't happen. And the reason it got this way, frankly, is because we see this once a year. I hear you're going to do it by 6/30/15. If you don't do it by 6/30/15, the next time we talk about this is, September 2015? No.
I'd like to remind you that when we did
We
the
changed it.
ordinance update, we have them coming back every 6 months now. So what that will be is 6 months from the date council approved the audit, but I'm expecting that with these ones that are open, it would be 6 months from now that we would get a status. Unless they have them sooner, then they can report sooner. So we would bring them to you as soon as they're done.
So I have another question for the auditor, which is, when you do these audits and you make these audit recommendations, do you sit down with the staff and say, okay, when do you think realistically you can get these done? You agree on a date, and then there needs to be a good reason why the date's not met.
So I can't answer what's been done in the past.
No, but on a going forward basis.
Going forward, we are working closely with staff to make sure that the recommendations are feasible, and part of that would be identifying how soon you could implement something, and then if something would take a long time to implement, what the reasons would be, and if there's something that can be done in the interim to mitigate whatever the issue is.
So have you looked through all these target dates, and do you agree that that is a reasonable amount of time, and that they're not taking too long to do this, that that it's a reasonable amount of time, and that you've reviewed this and given thought to it?
I think since most of them are to be completed by the end of this year, those are reasonable. The ones that are to be completed by the end of the fiscal year, I think most of those were in discussions with staff. They wanted to make sure they had enough time to get everything done, but we didn't talk about, can you get it sooner?
Okay. I just think that, I think it's fine. Sometimes they're higher priorities. Staff may have something that's more important to do, frankly, and say to you, well, we have, 12,000 things to do, and these are the priorities, and this is why it's going to take that long. And I think all of us on council are fine with that. It's just a matter of understanding and then making sure it doesn't get lost, because clearly anything that's open from 2008 got lost. That's clearly not okay. So with that, I appreciate the audit. I actually appreciate that the department seemed to have really stepped up, and I think it's a positive. They've actually gotten through these audit recommendations. We're almost there. I think we've changed the whole feeling of this. So I feel good about it.
Yes, thank you. I concur. I'm very impressed by the amount of work, the quality of work, the engagement of the staff to address these issues. I think it's been very, very impressive, and I think having more frequent updates will be helpful as well. I am particularly pleased to hear about the training regarding internal controls, and just if you could answer this quick question, which is, Is there a target by when you anticipate that this kind of training would be completed, and is it supposed to be including all departments in the city?
So the training, I will be working with ASD on that, but the new standards just came out 2 weeks ago, and I knew that they were in the works, and so I haven't developed a training yet. I wanted to wait to see. I have done internal control trainings in the past in other places I've worked. I've done a couple of presentations on these new standards, not for the city, but for other auditors. And so I'm very familiar with them, and I think I can develop a training fairly quickly. But my guess is it'll be probably January before I can start rolling something out. And I'll probably work with ASD on prioritizing who should get the training. We could do something like do it in the council chambers where a lot of people can come and just kind of schedule. But I think he'll be working with a variety of staff to see what works best for the schedules.
Okay, great. And also your comment about the feasibility of recommendations going back and sort of having them go through that kind of a process, I think is extremely helpful for the staff. And what I have felt positive about is the engagement of your staff with all the departments and with the city manager to really address these items, many of which have been on these lists since I first got into office 5 years ago. So I really appreciate this work. And it seems like the connection with the departments and working with them if they have issues and concerns is very positive.
So I just want to give some credit to my staff that they're the ones who work directly with the departments, and then also I think Jim encouraged the departments to get these recommendations moving along. So I think that combination of things helped on this report.
I agree, and I think it's really reflected in the work and all of the outcomes we have sitting here and the things that everyone in this city is attentive to. So thank you very much. Were there any members of the public who wanted to speak on item number 1? Nope. Councilmember Schmidt.
I make a motion that we recommend to the City Council acceptance of the attached report and status of our recommendations.
Second.
Okay.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, would you like to speak to your motion first?
Yeah, again, I think it is a noticeable change, especially when you get back to pages 36, 35, 38, where the audit response to the actions that have been taken are very clearly laid out. And I think that's helpful for us. So I encourage you to move forward with that transition.
Excuse me, as city manager, do you want to make a comment?
I would like to, but I didn't want to, Councilmember Sharp.
Okay, Councilmember Sharp.
So Larry's not going to speak to this? Okay, fair enough. So I can only support the motion if we update item number 14 to explain what needs to be done in the update section, because otherwise I don't feel the report's complete, so I couldn't recommend to council. I'd have to vote against it. So I would offer a friendly amendment that Public Works,
What page is it?
packet page 12, on finding number 14, that Public Works just updates under the target date, either the target date, if it's complete, or whatever needs to be done there. So then I could vote for
And
it.
for which finding was that?
Number 14.
Number 14.
Greg, are you accepting this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm accepting it somewhat reluctantly. This is a point I've been making for years. We are not approving this report. We're accepting it. It's a big difference. But this is so minor that I'll go along with it. But I want colleagues to keep in mind that our job isn't to review the work of the auditor on this report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes 4-0.
Madam Chair, may I just
Yes.
make a follow-up comment? So I wanted to add my voice to a comment that Harriet made, and I think it's made elsewhere, which is there's been a lot of effort to catch up and clean up some of these past audits, but I think under Harriet's leadership, I think there's also a focus on, as she was indicating, making practical recommendations and sort of discerning between what really matters versus, what are, findings or ideas that could take a lot of time to deal with, but really don't have a lot of return on investment. So I really do, I think that one, on the going forward basis, I think that will result in, again, more efficiency on completion. And I think it also builds a more trusting relationship between the staff being audited and the auditor's office, knowing that there really is a kind of triage and hierarchy of what's important versus just commentary. So I think that there's been a really good foundation for the future that has been laid. Harriet's efforts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask a question? I was just curious, was there a desire to stay with the agenda as it was ordered? I didn't know if there was any...
There's been no discussion otherwise.
I mean, the only thought I had is that, item 3 seems, the Alma Plaza fees issue seems relatively straightforward. And I'm assuming the other item might take more discussion, unless I'm wrong about that. And we're going to have some staff sitting around here for a long period of time waiting to take up item number 3. I'm just wondering if the committee would be willing to rearrange the order.
I'll move we do item number 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so changed. Item number 3 will be taken now, and the last item will be item number 2. So item number 3, recommendation to council on fees and fee exemptions for the Alma Plaza Community Room and other Community Services Department facilities. And if members of the public want to speak, please submit cards. I have one here for agenda item number 3, which is the one we're taking up right now. Okay, could we have a staff report?
You bet. Good evening, members of the Policy and Services Committee. Greg Betts, Director of Community Services. This is a follow-up from a question posed by Councilmember Holman during the fiscal year 15 budget hearings as to the reason behind the fee and the municipal fee schedule for the Alma Plaza Community Room. Since Councilmember Holman was on the Planning Commission and was under the impression that the Alma Plaza was a public benefit as part of the development entitlement process, and why not have the rooms free to the public. And I'm glad she asked that question. It allows us to explain a little bit about our co-sponsorship policy. Also allows us to talk about the 4 tiers of pricing that we use for facility rentals. It's staff's belief that the co-sponsorship policy is working very well. It allows a lot of clubs, leagues, different groups to be able to use our facilities for a variety of different classes and activities. And so our recommendation is really that the co-sponsorship policy is working and that the fee schedule should be kept as passed by council last June. Let me start by just explaining that when we charge fees for the use of a facility, whether it's the community room at the Lucy Stern Center, or whether in this case it's the room at the Alma Plaza upstairs from the grocery store, there's basically 4 different classes of fees that we may or may not charge for an activity. And I'm referring to attachment A on page 8-1. The first group of fees is for city use or city-sponsored or co-sponsored activities. And for those activities, there is no charge for the activity. So whether the clerk's office wanted to have a recognition picnic at Foothills Park on the weekend, that is a city's co-sponsored event. There's no fee for that. A number of examples of the uses of that might be a neighborhood group that wants to get together to discuss about disaster preparedness, or perhaps have a training session, or just a group meeting that will allow civic engagement, that is something that is consistent with the city's goals and programs. And there's a broad range of different co-sponsorship. We have currently, the Community Services Department has 100 co-sponsored activities at present. Some activities may be just a standing event, like an electric car rally, sponsored by Actera, just for one weekend. That would be a co-sponsored event. Others are ongoing where they need, like the Audubon Society, the use of the auditorium at the Art Center on a monthly basis for their education programs. The second type of fee is Class 2, and that's for any of our nonprofit organizations. So if it's any type of an agency that is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, they automatically get a 50% rate on the use of a room or a facility. That's not to say that if, in my example of the electric car rally, if Actera felt that there was something that would be of benefit to the city, they could ask the city to co-sponsor that, and in that case, the facility would be completely free. The third class is Class 3, and that's for family uses. And the probably most easy to understand example is for a wedding or a anniversary party, a birthday party, or something like that. That is sometimes what we call an exclusive use, meaning that it's your family's birthday party. The doors are going to be shut. You're not going to expect the general public to wander through. It really is yours for the evening, and that would be at essentially 100% rate. And then the fourth class of fees are for activities for which there's some profit or there is fees charged. Take, for example, at Coverly, where we work with Skilled Path to put on training seminars that they put on for local businesses, and they charge a fee. They use our facilities to make profit. We take the basic 100% fee, tack on 70%, and that's the fee that we would charge for Skill Path. The second thing I wanted to point out is, so what about Alma Plaza? This was a community benefit, as was the park that's there as part of the development. The city, all I can tell you is that the city council approved a use agreement for that facility that included the city's right to charge fees for the use of that room. Now, the use of that room would follow these four different classes. And many of the uses of the community room have been for neighborhood associations, for clubs, for Boy Scouts or things like that, that either are at the half-price nonprofit rate or co-sponsored because it has a community benefit. The reason that we charge fees for the use of the room is perhaps best explained is that there's no front desk there at the Alma Plaza Center. If someone wants to use that room, they come to either Coverly or to the Lucy Stern Center, and they complete an application for the use of the facility. We schedule it. We arrange for the loan of a key so that they can get into the facility. We have to notify Alma Plaza that actually owns the rest of the complex and takes care of security for the facility. And then after the event, we have to send somebody out from Coverly with a vacuum cleaner to clean up the facility. There's no closets on site. And so there's staff time involved with that use. And again, we would charge that fee if it was a birthday party, an anniversary, a exclusive use activity. We have charged fees since the community room was turned over to the city. And the fees are based on a per square foot basis that is pretty much consistent with the same formula that we use for determining our fees at the community center at Stern, the New Mitchell Park Center, the Art Center, or other facilities. It's not intended to make a profit. It's basically intended to cover the cost of registering the event, securing the event, and cleaning up after the event. So we're essentially treating Alma Plaza consistent with our other facilities. I can tell you that, just as a point of reference, the fees that we charge for Alma Plaza are less than the JCC, the Elks Club, or the Women's Club of Palo Alto. It is a good deal. And we do try to work with organizations that are co-sponsored, where possible, to provide publicity for their event. If it's something like this electric car rally or something, that we either advertise it in our Enjoy catalog, or we help in other ways so that it truly is a co-sponsored activity. So the staff's recommendation is basically to keep the co-sponsorship policy as is, and hopefully this kind of explanation of our fees, which have been in place for as long as I can remember, is kind of a working striation of the fees that we charge. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sharp?
So I was a little confused. It's probably my fault. By the way, great presentation. I thought you succinctly laid it out. With the co-sponsorship, it's then free if the city co-sponsors, right?
That's correct.
And the city co-sponsors when it is a community benefit, community service, as opposed to a nonprofit using it, right? So if a homeowners association wants to, not homeowners, a neighborhood association wants to meet, right? That's a community benefit normally?
That is correct. Let me give you as an example, Councilmember Sharp. I found it interesting that Sherry Furman from the Midtown Residents had raised the question about, the Midtown residents being able to use the facility, because actually they have used community services facilities 5 times in the last 3 years, and all 5 of them were free of charge. One was for simply planning their community day at Hoover Park. One was for a disaster preparedness meeting. One was just for an annual meeting of their members. Those are some of the examples of how it really benefits the neighborhood association to build a sense of community in Midtown.
So if the Boy Scouts come, right, and that's open only to their troop or something, then it's a nonprofit and we charge.
That's correct.
Whatever.
You got it.
If somebody, say I come to you and I say, and not as a city council member, so if, a citizen comes to you and says, I want to do a lecture on climate change or whatever, and it's open to the public and I'm going to be advertising it, do we charge for that, or do we say that's a community and we co-sponsor it, or do we just...
Very good question. I think the best example I could give you is out at the Baylands Nature Center. We partner with the Bay Area Bird Photographers, which is a subgroup of the Audubon Society. They have a group of digital bird photographers that are just pros at digital photography. So they put on a class on digital photography. We don't have to hire anybody. It's put in our Enjoy catalog like any other city class. And it fits with the type of artistic classes we offer. They don't charge a fee, and it's kind of seamless to the people taking that class, whether it's city staff or our partners putting it on.
Right.
There's no fee. They get to use our nature center. We get to benefit from their expertise. The public gets to benefit from a really good professional experience.
Okay, well, that sounds great. The only other question is, I guess I had 2 other things which are a little probably slightly off field. Utilization, do we, are we pricing these things so that they're utilized well? I mean, you obviously don't want to price them so high that you don't get much utilization, and you don't want to have a huge waiting list either. And you said we're covering our costs, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, is that all sort of coming together, that it's used? Because they're actually different things. I mean, you could, price it so that, it covers our costs, but we could have huge waiting lists for this, or we could have no one using it because covering our costs is too high. So I'm just really trying to understand what utilization is like.
I think we have found the sweet spot in terms of fees that are reasonable, that provide value for the people that use our facilities, that we're not turning away a lot of people. And when we have requests that we somehow can't meet, we do look to, for example, the Lawn Bowls Club, which is nearby, that we can refer to rentals there, or the Women's Club or something like that. But we're at a good 80% capacity of our community centers, and that's where we want to be in terms of keeping our centers active with a wide range of activities and classes and rentals.
And then lastly, you indicated you had to go to Coverly to do this.
Yes.
Are we moving it all to
Yes.
putting it online?
Yeah. Well, we are, this year, because we have a new software system, ActiveNet, there are 5 facilities that we are testing out to do online. We're kind of following a model that was pioneered by the library for study rooms, and using that same sort of model where you don't need a building attendant or you may not need insurance. It's just a very simple meeting use like tonight's meeting.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Councilmember Schmidt?
You don't mention how often the Alma Plaza room is used. Can you tell us?
It's a little bit limited because of the hours of the day. The community room is kind of split between the homeowners association, which is able to use it at nighttime and early mornings, and then the community use, which is during the afternoons and early evenings. In the last year, we had 30 classes and individual rentals at the Alma Plaza.
30. That's not a heavy usage.
No, it's not.
I guess it's
Some of those classes, like for example, we've had Zumba and yoga, which are on a weekly basis, and so some of those activities were on a repeating basis.
more than once. It is relatively isolated. It's by itself.
Yes.
It's on the second floor of a building that has gone through a few changes.
Yes,
People are scratching their head about parking.
parking is a problem.
So it's a unique characteristic, and as you say, 30 rentals in a year is not a lot.
It is quirky, yes.
And this is a public benefit. I guess it was given by the builder of the community to the public to offset the fact that a community center was disappearing. So the question is, most of the public benefits around town that are given, a plaza or a bench or something like that, are open to the public. And yet this has a fee that looks stiff. It's, for example, 20% more expensive than the fireside room at Lucy Stern.
But keep in mind, it's 1,100 square feet. It's a big room.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't seen it like many of my neighbors. So is there a need to create incentives for people to know it's there? I've had people come up to me saying, oh, gee, where can I get space? And this is not easily known by all. And even when you say it, where is it? Like that. So is there something we should be doing to reaching out and say, hey, this belongs to the public. It wasn't built by the city with the city bond. It was built for the public.
That's a very, very good point. It used to be that if you were looking to have a birthday party for your dad or an anniversary party, you may go around and visit our different community centers and talk to Suzanne at the Arts Center, or perhaps you go over to Cumberland and talk to Amy or something like that. With the new Mitchell Park Community Center, we're really taking this opportunity to make it one-stop shopping, so that if you go in and say, hey, I'm having a birthday party, we try to find the right facility for the right event. So we would say, listen, okay, how many people are you expecting? Tell me a little bit about, do you need hardwood floors? What kind of amenities do you need? So that we could show you a brochure that would have pictures of the Arts Center, of all the rooms at Mitchell Park at Stern, including even the classroom up at Foothills Park, and the Alma Plaza facility, so that you'd really have a brochure to be able to see all of our facilities on an equal basis, just to make your reservations that much easier.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned with as you say, there's some overflow now from the Mitchell Park rebuilding, the covered uses in the library, and in a couple months those will disappear. Are there alternate uses we could think of for that space that would bring in a constant flow of people who can use a public space? You think of something like, after-school tutoring, where you could get 20, 30 kids to come in after school, do their homework, have an adult working with them, or a music program where kids can come in and do music after school, or even a place of...
And that is one of the activities that we have there is a music program. But I guess I would have to give that some thought and come back to you with suggestions for ways that we might
even a community,
mix it up a little more.
A community workspace where during the day when no one's there, people can come in with their computers and work for a while, get a cup of coffee, and have a social space to work. Those are very valuable downtown. So is there something we could do, with this community benefit, which is a little different, and not have a nice space seriously underutilized? So just some thoughts about changing the price, changing the use, getting a partner to utilize it on a regular basis.
We do have activities like that at the Ventura Auditorium, which is not too far from there. But that's a good suggestion of something similar like what we're doing. The only difference, of course, is at Ventura, the keys are right next door there at the PAC office. And it's just a matter of the logistics of the opening, closing, and keeping the facility secure during the activity.
Yeah. But if you did it through PTA or something,
Partnership,
you could
right.
volunteers
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Klein?
Well, let me start first by asking for more data.
Okay.
A common theme these days, all council elections. But I'd like to know how many hours per year this room is used in comparison to choose some of the other ones. The 30 you mentioned for classes, and then you quickly realize it's not really a relevant number. It sounds like only 30 days, but it's really, I don't know how many days it translates to, but it's a course, so it's, you can bet once a week for 10 weeks, that's, 10 of those, that's 300 hours rather than 30. So I think you got to dive a little deeper into those numbers to show just how much it's being used, what's its percent of occupancy.
Would it be all right, Councilmember Klein, if I incorporated that information in the staff report back to council when I bring this?
Well, we'll see where this is going, whether it's going to council yet or not.
Okay.
And I sort of get to where Councilmember Schmidt is with that, a little different route. I think the public benefit from the PC is really on the same footing as something that the city built itself. I don't see any reason for distinguishing it. Either way, it seems to me that we want to maximize the public's use of the facility. That's the goal, and that's some strange distinction. But I then say to myself, why are we treating all these rooms the same? I was saying, well, let's be a little entrepreneurial. If we had an architectural gem designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, would we really charge the same amount as we charge for the fireside room? I think that would be sort of crazy. And similarly, if we have some space that's not used or underutilized compared to the others, why not be like any business and say, hey, if you use this one, you're only going to be charged half as much. And that may be where we are with regard to a new facility like this, the one that is in an area which never had a community center before.
Right.
I have to say that Alto Plaza was not a community center.
Right.
But let's be entrepreneurial, and that may really get to the same place, and that is we want to encourage use, not make it hard for our citizens to use it. And depending how I thought about my relative, I might choose to
No, for
have
God's
a
sake.
birthday party
For God's
at the high price or the low price then.
And that's being recorded.
Well, but none of my family's listening to it.
I'm calling them immediately. Okay.
No, I'm not quite done yet.
Do you have more comments?
Yeah, I wanted to have one other thing. I was concerned by the email we got from Norman Beamer,
Yes.
and which seems to be contrary to what you were telling us. Just so everybody knows what we're talking about. And he asserts that there's been a change in city policy and neighborhood associations that used to have use of the art center of Lucy Stern, which made sense for his neighborhood, which is Preston Park. And this past June, however, we were subjected to the standard fee because we are not incorporated as a not-for-profit corporation and so on and so forth.
You know, I can't tell you what happened with Mr. Beamer. I am looking into that, but I can tell you there has been no change in policy, and I'm not sure who may have handled that rental, but if it was for a neighborhood association, it does not matter that they're not an incorporated nonprofit. And that's partially why I also looked at, some of the, I wasn't able to find any records under Mr. Beamer's name, so I'm wondering if it might be under someone else in the neighborhood association, but I just wanted to let you know that that is kind of a uniqueness.
I take it that you'll be responding to Beamer?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one member of the public, Mr. Weiss, who wants to make comments.
This is for a different item or this item? Microphone check 1, 2. Is it on?
Yep.
My name is Mark White, 1788 Oak Creek Drive, Palo Alto. Well, I guess I want to offer kudos to Councilmember Holman, who my understanding from reading the staff report is the one who, in a different subcommittee, flagged this, and to citizen activist, watchdog, and writer Mr. Ballin, Fred Ballin, in the House tonight, for his research ongoing over a number of years on Alma Plaza or Alma Village, which has been a source of a lot of frustration in the community, as well as Ms. Furman's letter would indicate, or Mr. Beamer's letter would indicate. I would say the opposite, though. I would say we should really scrutinize the use of this room because just the history of this project has been so much, I would call it kinky, bordering on stinky, if you excuse the phrase. It's just been some weird stuff, and I think we should really watch this very vigilantly, the use of this room. And it also seems like if we really wanted a community center there, I mean, maybe that would have been a bigger part of the planning and the discussion with the developers from square one. That being said, and not to contradict myself, I've gotten a lot of calls from mothers of teenagers who are looking for places to rehearse their rock bands and jazz bands, and we don't really have a teen center per se, but maybe it'll become moot once the Mitchell Park opens. I forget how that's going to be configured. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this, my context for wanting to talk about this a little bit is that my company Earthwise Productions had produced more than 150 events using city facilities, chiefly the Coverly Community Center Theater and Multi-Purpose Room, which is now the library. I produced a concert series mostly in the 90s, mostly working with Richard James and Leon Kaplan and Barry Weiss and people like that from Arts and Culture Division, Paul Bilgen, Williams, all of them. And that's where I met Mr. Betts, actually. I actually, even though I produced 150 shows at Coverly, I actually thought we as a community underutilized Coverly. And I know that's even a hot topic right now, like how we can use Coverly. But I just want to say I think we should keep watching this project, and we should be charging market rate.
Thank you. Councilmember Sharp?
So I just want to follow up briefly to what Larry was saying. So we're going to respond to Mr. Beamer.
Yes.
And also to Ms. Furman, because I understand from
Yes.
that she actually can use it as a neighborhood association
Yes.
meeting, and that they have in the past, and that the charges aren't here, right? And we get that information out to her.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. Since the reservations were under Annette's name, I think I'll just connect the dots.
Great. If you could copy Annette then too on that, that'd be great. I wanted to say that I agree with Larry. I think that there's no difference the fact that this is a PC public benefit and any other city facility. If you pay for it with bonds or whatever, we should run all of our city facilities to benefit the public as much as possible. So I don't see a distinction there. But I do think Larry's point is a good one, is about utilization of all city facilities. Now, this isn't agendized that way, so I actually would be very interested in getting the data on that. Are we charging the right, amount to maximize utilization? How much are people utilizing them? Should we be charging lower fees at ones that are underutilized? I think there's a whole range of things that Larry was addressing there. I'm just not sure this is the right forum today, since it's not agendized that way, and you obviously don't have the information you'll be able to prepare, and obviously not, because that's not on the agenda. So with that, I'll actually move the staff recommendation.
There's another member of the public who wants to speak.
Okay.
Mr. Bailiff?
Oh, I thought we were done. Sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah, I thought so too.
I accidentally handed the card for
Okay.
item 3 rather than 2. Alma Plaza is not a community center. It was a neighborhood center, one of 4 in the comprehensive plan, only 4. 100% commercial, 90% retail, it became 75% housing. Part of that was a public benefit, market, and the community room. You may recall there was a huge brouhaha over the community room, even after the PC was approved by the council. The hours of the parking, how much people would be there, et cetera, et cetera. The staff report says 30 hours, as I read this, specifically to this room, but to all co-sponsored things together, beyond the Alma Plaza meeting. It's taken years till we've ever got to the point where we knew it was available, where services finally got to it. $110 an hour, or $150 if you're not a resident. It's pretty steep. So I think what we are in the middle of, folks, is Cafe Riachi, a public benefit that basically disappears over time. And I don't think this was the expectation that the people had at the time when we were discussing Alma Plaza, but here we are. So that's my thought.
Thank you. I just had an observation. The fees that we charge, these fees are based in part on the oversight and maintenance required, the follow-up required of staff, correct? So
That is correct. And as you know, the fee study, this is one aspect of the fee study that's coming to council in the next couple of months. Where we're looking at the direct costs and the overhead cost is what prescribes what we charge.
right. So if we were to consider, a modification of this fee downward, then we might not be covering some of the cost to the city related to the administration and the rental process and the cleanup and the maintenance requirements. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. There've been a lot of comments here about the marketing and efforts to make it more visible to the community. Community members have made comments about that as well. And I'm assuming you will be addressing those if the motion is to move this forward. Remind me again how long this particular site has been available. Room, I should say.
Let me check on that. I know that the council approved the use agreement with the developer in 2009. Time flies. My memory tells me it was 2010 that opened, but
Okay.
I can include that information in the staff report as well.
And has there been an increase in usage
Yes.
over the last,
Yes.
last couple, 3 years?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a positive.
Yes.
So it certainly seems that it's really critical that the community become more aware of this, and efforts you make in terms of marketing community services and facilities, I think, are good, but we can always do better on that.
Absolutely.
So did people have other comments or willing to make a motion?
I was trying to.
You were trying to, but we weren't done yet. So would you like to go that route again?
Yeah, I would. And now I guess I have one other question. So if we vote, what is the procedural, where are we in the procedural posture on this is my question vis-a-vis council. I mean, if we vote, yeah, we want to keep it the same way, is there any reason why this would go to council? If, I mean, you know, why would you have something on the consent calendar that says we're going to keep the existing? So that's really my question, and maybe the city attorney knows the answer. I'm trying to figure out, so if we vote for the staff recommendation, what happens next? If I vote against the staff recommendation, what happens next? I mean, if I was just wanted to say, okay, we've talked about it, what I really want to have happen is you to come back to us and we look at the utilization and feel comfortable that we have the right pricing, all the issues that Larry raised. That's what I really want you to do, is come back to us here, and I see no reason to go to council and say, unless that was the council thing, that council wants us to put this on the consent calendar that says, you know, assuming it was 4-0, and if it's not 4-0, then I suppose that, does it then go to council, or where are we on this?
Well, I think, I don't know if Molly's looking up stuff, but I mean, my initial reaction in one sense that you raise a very good question. You know, on the one hand, you would presume that common sense could be just an informational item sent to the council about where we are, unless there's some specific criteria that Molly would say any referral to the Policy and Services Committee requires an automatic response back to the council, and it doesn't.
It's not required unless the council in its motion made that direction, and I don't recall that. Maybe the clerk can...
It was an amendment to a budget ordinance, so
Yeah.
the referral to Policy and Services,
Yeah, well,
so I assume there's nothing that says you have to
I mean,
come back
this
to
has
council.
been our practice, generally, has it not? Going from here back to city council.
Well, if there's an action that's required of the council,
Yeah.
yes. But I think Molly's point is that the referral didn't require this to return to the council for authorization. If it really is just receiving a report, and we ultimately,
Right.
it's been vetted here, and then we share that information with the council and the public, you know, I personally, I think that makes common sense, and we shouldn't get so locked into some sort of form over substance that we just sort of throw common sense out the window. The truth is, you know, any number of council members, if they somehow wanted to take this up with the council, there are other vehicles for doing that, you know, but, you know, your agendas are busy enough.
Okay,
Right.
true.
So I guess I'll just make a motion that you come back to us with utilization and, you know, confirming that, you know, Mr. Beamer's is incorrect, and you know that you don't have to be incorporated, and that these issues have been addressed basically, and what it looks like in terms of use, and should we make any changes to the use? Should we charge different fees based on use? What it really costs, and then a little bit. You mentioned you have to bring a vacuum cleaner over there. And I wasn't sure if that's a big issue or not, because someone has to go over and clean it anyway. Or is there a service that cleans it? Or does somebody from the staff literally go over there and vacuum it? So I would sort of like to know what the expenses of the meetings. We say we're going to lose money, but I'm unclear as to what that means. I mean, obviously you could put an armoire in the corner and keep a vacuum cleaner if that was if that was a big expense in the building. So I just wanted to get a sense of what it really means, what recovery of costs really looks like, how we're calculating that recovery of cost, that kind of stuff.
Second.
Okay, do you want to speak to your motion to the second?
No, I think I've...
Okay, would you like to speak to your
Well, I
second?
seconded. I think that what comes back should be a little bit broader. The agenda item says recommendations to council on fees and fee exemptions for the Alma Plaza Community Room and other community service department facilities. And that to me gets comments as to whether we could include the idea that we ought to have marketplace pricing on this facility and some of the others. And it also gets to the question of how we're calculating the cost on this. I have a feeling that you're melding a lot of costs rather than just direct costs. It's been a long time since I had an accounting course, but I do know that you can play games with whether we're on full recovery there or not. And we might have to have a loss leader for a bit to try to increase the use. I don't know, because we haven't seen enough data to really judge that. But I think that's really what I think that's what the motion really was getting at, or at least I hope it was.
No, that's what I was getting at.
But not on yours, I meant Karen Holman's, which was seconded by Councilmember Schmidt. That is that we have there was a lot of hard bargaining in that sense. Fred was certainly right that we have a community asset. Like anything else that's a community asset, we ought to try to maximize its utilization. And that's what I'm looking for when this comes back, and hopefully you can come back next month on it. I don't think we're asking for a lot of data from you.
So I just have a quick comment. If I'm not mistaken, we went through a municipal fee study and we examined all of our fees, including, did it include kind of the basis for our rental fee structure, or have I missed something?
I'm going to ask Londo, who's our business manager, to just check in on the fee study.
Good evening, Councilmember Rice and colleagues of the committee. I apologize. Can you repeat the full question that you were having?
Okay, my question is, the municipal fee study that was completed recently, did that include an assessment of the fees that we are charging for rental of community facilities?
Yes, the cost of services does include it. It includes it as a grouping as a whole. It does not include it as a breakout by facility.
Got it. Okay. Good. Thank you. I just wanted to point out we got to be careful about the kinds of things we're looking at here. This is somewhat of a unique situation in some ways, but I think we have to be careful because I would not like to see that part of the fee study kind of reopened and re-examined unless colleagues vote for that. But anyway, it's just a comment I wanted to make. So we have a motion before us with some amendments to it. Councilmember Schmidt.
Just a clarification on what the motion is. Listening to Councilmember Klein, what we're doing is asking you to come back to Policy and Services with the hours of use of the Alma Village room and the utilization rates of other public spaces, so we can compare ones with the others, and possible alternate pricing and uses of the room.
Not just this room, right? This is sort of, I thought it was all facilities, so it's not like this one's being singled out and everything else is being compared to it.
I stated it as singled out, and I thought Larry had.
I think Greg has it right. If this Greg, by the way, do we have a citywide moratorium? No more people going in, Greg?
Majority.
Yeah, there are too many of them.
I move everyone has to be named Greg.
But I don't like the name.
I think we might build out a vote.
If your utilization rate showed that we have one facility running at 105% capacity and some other ones, I think the Alma Plaza one running at 40% capacity, well, maybe we ought to be doing something about that too. I don't know whether we have numbers like that, but
Right, but I was
Different
hearing this
markets.
was still dealing with the overall policy related to all facilities. And very
It
well,
was.
maybe we
I
could
was-
we may find out that we have a facility that performs even worse than this particular
Yeah,
one.
that's my point. I think that was what
But we're going to look at all facilities.
Yes, yeah, well-
Not just Alma Plaza.
no, the comparable ones. We're not looking
Yeah.
at the,
Right.
I don't want us to start looking at every conceivable thing. It's just
No.
meeting rooms.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know,
My only comment on that is that, of course, there are different markets for different facilities throughout the city, so it gets a little bit more complicated once you start looking at it that way. But anyway, go ahead, Steve.
Your point's very well taken. I was going to say the new Palo Alto room at the Mitchell Park Center was designed to be a big ballroom, so it's kind of predicated on 300 people to 500 people use.
That's fine, but
so-
all you need to have is little footnotes that says room A has a capacity of 500 people and room B has a capacity for 25 people. Obviously, those are it's a different game. They're different markets.
Sure.
But you pointed out that, what did you say, how many square feet, 1,100 square feet?
Yes.
Okay, so in analyzing this particular one, I guess I would be looking at rooms that are 500 square feet to 1,500 square feet or something of that nature, something that's comparable so that we are doing the classic apples to apples and so forth.
Okay.
Is the staff clear on the additional information that's been requested?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I have
Okay.
one other question.
Oh, my goodness.
So
Council
since we'll
Member
be looking at
Sharp.
all of these facilities, I guess I want to know when we're going to get the Baylands Interpretive Center fixed. So you can walk out there. Does anyone know? Do we have plans to fix it?
Are you referring to the boardwalk?
I'm referring to the boardwalk, yeah.
I think last night's discussion about the water board, which has jurisdiction over the repairs of
Oh,
that
my
board, should be a little bit of a glimpse into the JARPA process that we're going to be embarking on to repair that because it is an endangered clapper rail habitat. So I'm taking a deep breath and gearing up for that.
Perhaps we should agendize that for another
Yes.
night
Yes.
or into the future.
I did see my first clap rail in 40 years.
Well,
They are there.
do colleagues have any other questions, comments? We have the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Jeff.
So Cash, we want to put this on the agendas coming up in October? Does that make sense? November? November,
We'll
possibly?
take a look at it.
Okay, we'll be talking about the schedule at the end? Okay. Okay. We're going back to original agenda item number 2, review and recommend to City Council changes to the scheduled release of council agenda packets and other materials related to agendas, reports, and minutes. Could we have a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm waiting for the city clerk folks to come up here. Since you're certainly lead on this, we thought we'd let you lead off in here to support you.
We'll scoot over onto the other side of the city manager. Give you these two seats.
The microphone setup is so good in this room. Something that will be remedied soon.
Good evening. For the past year, we've had at the executive level talked about the early release of packets, and we understand the public wanting this out earlier. And currently, as you know, our packets are out on Wednesday for the following Monday's meeting. And we've been trying to think of an effective way how we can transition to an earlier packet. We had thought we could do it in this past summer. It didn't work, so now we're looking at, we would like to have the transition of the holiday break to give us time to get the packet out so we would begin the early release in January. With the packets going out the Wednesday or Thursday, 2 weeks prior to the council meeting. and that would be approximately 12 days in advance. Under the current Wednesday packet, the agenda development and report writing typically begins for the staff and Jim's department heads 4 to 6 weeks in advance. With if it's a public hearing, the noticing goes in the paper like 4 to 5 weeks prior to the council meeting. There are, as with any transition, some concerns or issues that have arisen thinking this through. And one will be, and I think we have an educated population, but it is going to be some confusion because we will be having 2 packets out effectively at the same time. You will be having, the one for the Monday coming up and then the one for the following Monday. So, it'll be the transition for everyone to shift to having 2 packets and speaking to the right agenda and the right item and keeping track of that. I think it can be overcome, but I just think it's an issue that's out there. Second is there is concerns that we need to resist the tendency when a packet's out and a report's out, and Jim could probably speak to this more, but the tendency to change what's out there, to add more information because we have time.
Well, we don't have time.
I know, because the perception, that's what I'm trying to say. The perception is, and my concern is, because if you have revised agendas, you're going to have mass confusion. If we are adding things, taking things off, putting another report out, who's on, where are we? So, and I don't know, Jim, but if you want to speak to this more into depth about the council questions, but that allowing this time and allowing staff the time to answer, this discussion came about getting council questions the Friday prior to the meeting instead of the Monday of the meeting to allow more time for staff to respond. So, and then lastly, minutes was something that came up, and it's, I have had my staff do research, which we do have as part of the attachment at your place. We do have for you what it'll look like, first of all, what it will look like to get the packet out earlier. This is an internal document for us. But we also we did a survey of surrounding cities and to see how many people do sense minutes is what we do, and it's other people might call it summary minutes. There's
excuse me, what are we looking at?
It's attached to this little handout, Larry. Let's make sure he's got it. Everybody,
right.
It's the same one here that the data the clerk has is attached to this matrix.
Did everybody get one?
Yeah,
you
it's
see
the
it?
one, the narrative.
Right, right. So if you go past it, we have, you have the verbatim minute. There are 3 types of minutes, just real quickly, is you have verbatim minutes, which is what Planning and Transportation Commission does. Of the 25 cities that we checked, only 8% did verbatim minutes. At sense minute summary, 12%. The majority of cities are doing what's called action, which is where it's the motion, what was approved during the meeting, and then they're relying on the video to go back to, and then these minutes can be turned around and items can go from standing committee to council within 2 weeks. Where currently now to get sense minutes if you remember in my budget, we now contract out to get minutes done. It takes 3 to 4 weeks to get minutes back. So items, going to an earlier packet, this is part of the concern. Yes, we could still stay with sense minutes, but items can't come back as quickly. Otherwise, we are doing action minutes because that's just the turnaround that it takes to do summary minutes. But there was also concern, the legal department had, right, Molly, you can jump in here, but it's okay, that with us summarizing that Molly doesn't always feel, because we're not the experts, am I saying this okay? That we're summarizing words that maybe don't really get across the point that staff really feels is the fact.
Sure. So if I could just add to that. Donna's staff does a great job with a difficult assignment, but what we're asking here with the preparation of sense minutes is for an administrative person who is not maybe familiar with complex subject matter that was the subject of the discussion and was not present at the meeting, to listen to a recording and make decisions about what was important and how to summarize comments of elected officials and staff. And it really runs the risk of becoming a record that has some issues with respect to accuracy. So that's my concern. I'm much more comfortable with the action minute format plus the use of the video than to supplement to get a full actual understanding of what occurred at the meeting, as opposed to a summary that's been prepared by a staff person who isn't specifically trained in the area.
I'd like to just add something just on a personal basis in this regard. Actually, I never read the minutes. But I know if I did,
You would be amazed.
I would not agree with what the things I've said are always characterized accurately. And in one sense, you can sort of say you let that go. But if we were in a situation where we were in a lawsuit and you're on a witness stand and somebody starts reading back to you saying, well, this is what you sort of said, I would have to be in a situation where I said, well, no, I don't recall actually saying that. So I do think it does raise some questions. It's a lot of effort. We even have situations where sometimes there's a desire in the council that it's premature to act because you don't have the minutes ready. So it does relate to the efficiency of the agenda process. And you look at some other jurisdictions that actually pay to have transcript minutes. Also, if you really want to go do that, you just have court reporters in there just capturing everything exactly the way it is. That's the other way to do this if you really want some super degree of accuracy. So I think that, and I do think it does ask a lot of the clerk's office to, it's not easy work to try to be capturing all of this and to convert it with the fact that, it still has utility, but not complete utility.
And that is the transition going in the city clerk departments. That is the way they're doing it in surrounding and throughout the state. It is. And then finally, this one is that council procedures reflect that in order for a council to place items on the action agenda, a colleague's memo requires 2 votes, while items progressing to council from the standing committee only requires 1 vote. Theoretically, if you don't get four votes, it goes to an action item. If you get 3 of you would have said no to the previous one, that item would have come back on action. And that's what we're speaking to here.
Councilmember Klein is looking confused.
I'm looking confused too. It makes no sense.
So the idea is if an item is heard in a standing committee and one council member dissents from the majority vote of the standing committee, it goes on the full action agenda. So there is an ability for a single council member to go ahead and have access to that action portion of your regular agenda. Your other processes for getting onto the action agenda aren't like that.
Threshold.
Yeah, there's a higher threshold. So that's a question about whether you would want to consider.
I don't agree. A colleague's memo only starts a process. It doesn't get you to the point where you're necessarily going to be on the action part of the council calendar.
Okay, but the alternative is it does require 3 council members to pull something off of consent that is on the consent in the action calendar. But in this, and you do have a situation, there's nothing wrong with it, we're just calling it out, and it again deals with efficiency. Sometimes one member of a committee will intentionally vote just for the purposes of ensuring that it goes on the action portion of the agenda. Not always, but sometimes. And we're just pointing it out that is a different threshold than pulling something off of consent.
Yeah, but it seems apples and oranges.
Point of order. Could I ask the chair, I guess there are 5 different proposals on the table. Could we go through them one at a time and treat each one separately?
Yes, if that makes sense to do it that way, that's fine. If people have other comments about that? Okay.
Where does it say the 5?
Yeah.
So it's early release.
So the early release is the main thing. So that's 1, right?
Yeah.
So did you want to discuss that?
Well, I wasn't sure what the 5 were.
Yeah, we should do that. Second one is,
That's the supplemental reports issue,
okay, that's item 2.
which is the second paragraph on the
Yeah,
second
on
page.
packet 53, page 2.
Questions to staff, pulled from consent 3 days earlier, 2 days earlier. That's 3. Number 4 is the action minutes.
Well, I'd like to talk about them all at the same time. I don't want to sit here and do 5 rounds. I want to get this done in one thing. I think we could even have one motion.
But I only have 4 here.
The
Action,
last one is the standing committee needing 2 votes to get things off consent. So that's 5 tonight.
do other members of the committee have comments about how to proceed? You've said you want to do everything simultaneously. Councilmember Klein?
Undecided what the president will. I want to hear the discussion. I think here's how I would put it. I think the discussion ought to cover all 5, and then when we get to motions, and maybe
Break it out. Okay.
break them out one at a time.
Okay.
I can live with that.
Seems reasonable to me. Okay. So, who would like to make comments on any of these items?
All right, I'll make comments.
Okay.
Well, if Greg wants to go
Councilmember Sharp?
first, I'm happy to have Councilmember Schmidt go first if he wants to.
Okay. On the first item, the early minutes, I think this is a positive step.
The early packet.
Early packet, yeah.
The early minutes. I think early minutes.
We're writing them in advance of the meeting. That'll speed everything up.
So I'm going to say
Lawyers do that all the time. Really?
We could cancel the meeting.
That power.
I guess it puts us well ahead of other communities.
All of them.
Yeah, I mean, it is a positive thing for the public to be able to have time to absorb, discuss, and prepare their comments to the council. I think there are a couple of issues associated with that we should be sensitive to. I assume that while the city manager's report would stay the same, that there might be supplemental materials, if, for example, there are minutes of boards and commissions that get done in the interim, they could be added on. If letters come from the public, they could be added in when the next packet comes out. So there will be, quote, supplemental material, but it's not changing the basic input of the staff city manager's report.
Well, if I might speak to that, my assumption is that would not be a change from this current situation where you get at places information distributed. The question does come in, do we want to have a different distribution method with this greater advance time? And we would need to figure that out.
Though this is different in that we have a packet going out the next Wednesday or Thursday, and that could have this supplemental material in it. It doesn't displace the city manager staff memo, but it may supplement some of the information we in the public have before the meeting.
So the clerk's office has to handle the logistics of that, but it potentially is setting up multi-stage distribution work for them, if I understand that.
It will, and I understand, Councilmember Schmidt, where you're coming from. I think, again, back to the confusion, so we're going to be putting the next packet out for 2 weeks away. Yes, we could get it in that packet. I'm trying to think of a way where it doesn't get confused into what does this go to, because the packet's already gone, so maybe it'd have to be a different color. Or, it'd have to be bound saying, this is for the September 29th meeting. I think that's the way because I think you should get it, and the public should see any correspondence. We shouldn't hold on to it to the night of the meeting.
Yeah.
It should go out, if we have a packet. We would just do it in another color, or we would bind it in a separate book that would clearly say this is for whatever day that is. Just my thing is I just don't want to get a lot of new reports because then that will cause confusion.
I guess my second suggestion is you might rethink the heading. You know, right now you get this on Wednesday and, oh, it's for the next meeting. But it might be good to have date of meeting in bold across the top
I
or in
agree.
a different color or something, so that you can make a distinction even in a single packet of what goes where. And as you say, if you pick up the packet on the way to the council meeting, is it the right night? Do you have the right packet? So rethink maybe the headings. Okay, on second item, questions to staff and pulling from consent. I guess you want to move that up till Friday, which would be 2 days before the meeting. Take away the weekend, so you're talking about dealing with it during the week. It seems as though there would be enough time. It would have the advantage of having the questions beforehand be more prominent. There'd be more thought behind the answers. And maybe they can be given out before at places. I mean, one of the chronic problems with questions is when they're given at places, there's always other stuff going on when you get to your place. And you never have time to really absorb the script and read something. So I think we all follow the rules of getting something in Thursday or Friday with the agreement that, gee, the response might come by the time on Monday.
That's precisely the intent. The situation we have right now is somewhat erratic. It really turns Monday into the staff scrambling all day Monday, and very often the answers not getting to the council anyway or the public until you're at places. Yeah. So the whole point of having advanced questions is sort of lost. So the idea would be for us to get them early enough, as you're saying, so that we could we could farm those out even Friday, so that when we get together on Monday morning to prepare for the meeting, one of the things I can go over is the status of what are the answers that we have on the questions. We know what all the questions will be, rather than, because right now when we meet on Monday morning, we sit and we say, do you have any questions? No questions. And then we might get 6 questions that come in that afternoon. Well, people are in meetings doing all sorts of things. So.
And it's beneficial from the council members as well, rather than be asking staff questions at the last minute, to ask them early and have those responses before we act. So that's a good change, and I can see the benefits of that. Item number 3, turning to action minutes. I think this would kill the virtues of council committees to start with. I have noted the difference between the PTC and the UAC. The UAC has action minutes, which are virtually useless in getting a sense of what went on in the UAC meeting. PTC meetings, I guess they have verbatim.
They have verbatim.
Yes.
And that is a valuable resource. So, do you want nothing? Do you want sense minutes, or do you want verbatim minutes? I mean, there's no question that verbatim minutes, if you want to run an open, transparent, democratic process, that verbatim minutes of boards, commissions, and council committees are what you need. To ask people to go and watch videos and try and use a video, I'll tell you, it takes 4 times as long. And the easy reference to video, if you want to go back to something, doesn't work. And what you're doing is you are eliminating the valuable information that is coming both from citizen committees, from council committees. I mean, we spend our Tuesday nights here. What good does it do if the other council members never get anything out of it except, they voted 4-0. So that's a non-starter for me as an individual. Now, you asked to make the standing committees operate the same as colleague memos, which need 2 people. Colleagues' memo need 2 out of 9, which is 22%. One committee member is 1 out of 4, 25%. It already requires a higher portion of council members there to get something, pulled off consent. So to ask 2, that's 50%. And what that means essentially is the committee cannot report to council because a 2-2 vote does not pass. It does not go to council. So you're asking essentially or the committee the right to stop things going on. So again, that's a step which is monumental in its impact on what goes on in committees and how committees are treated, and access to the full council agenda, which is one of the key sources of active participatory democracy. So I am against item 3, I'm against item 4.
I'm not sure we have the numbering system exactly correct, but we'll just track each of your comments.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Sharp?
So yeah, I'm thrilled that we're going to do the early release of packets. I think it's a long time coming, and I think it's a great thing we're going to do, and very supportive of it. And I'm not really concerned about having 2 packets out. I think the public will get used to it fairly quickly. And I do think Councilmember Schmidt's, I had the same comment. Do we have the ability to do stuff in color without adding a lot of cost or not on the packet?
Can we do it? Yes. Will it add cost? Yes, but I mean, it can be done.
I mean, because I am thinking, big and bold and red with the date on it, so it stands out and everyone sees that. And so your eye's drawn to it immediately. And that'll even help me as a council member because, we have a lot of stuff going on. So, I absolutely am thrilled, and I appreciate the hard work you guys have put into getting this together. The action and the sense minutes. I've read those minutes once in a while. I skim them. I actually don't like the sense minutes either. And I think what I particularly don't like about the sense minutes is that there's no place where I can find the motion. Normally it shows what the original motion was, and it says so-and-so made an amendment, and then I have to follow it all the way through. So no matter what we do tonight, if we go with sense minutes, or we go with verbatim minutes, or if we go with action minutes, I guess then it's fine. I want to see the motion in one place with the motion as it was, so I can quickly just open it up and say, oh, this is what we did. Because a lot of times I want to look back and see what we did, and it's really hard to follow what the motion actually is. So that's one change I really want to see. I think we should do away with sense minutes, but I do have similar concerns to Councilmember Schmidt. And I especially concerns after hearing from the city manager and Molly, city attorney, regarding that this could actually hurt us in a legal case. And the reason I think it could actually hurt us in a legal case, and it's not going to be okay to say, I'm thinking about my deposition as a lawyer, sitting up there, and when you said that, it was very vivid in my head of how it goes. Because, I don't read them carefully. I think to myself, you know how much work it would be for me to read those minutes and then go back and watch each videotape to see what I actually said and what other... I may do this just to see what kind of havoc it causes at council. Because I'll watch it, read it, and say, no, Councilmember Schmidt, you didn't say this in the sense minute, or we need to add these. We could spend an hour going on the minutes. It might be fun to do it. Just to teach everyone what these things look like.
God.
So
try moving that way.
Do that.
Don't you have anything better to do?
Well, no, but I'm trying to highlight. Exactly.
My God.
I think the sense minutes are a problem because the deposition goes something like this: is I say, no, I didn't say that. I watched the videotape, and then they say, well, didn't you take a council motion to approve the minutes? Well, yeah, but I didn't read them. Well, you're a lawyer, Mr. Sharp. You didn't read the minutes. I just see this going really badly in that direction.
So this actually happened in a PERB proceeding where the union admitted the sense minutes of my comments to this committee in 2011. And I wanted to argue that I didn't say those things because I didn't recognize some of the words, much less the sentences. It was a very technical conversation, and it was not close to what actually occurred in committee. And the answer was exactly that. Well, isn't this an official city document? Yes, it is. Wasn't it distributed to you with a chance to make corrections before it was adopted by council? Yes, it was. Well, we're done. It comes in.
So the question in my mind is, should we go with the verbatim minutes, frankly, or should we go with, action minutes? And the verbatim minutes, they're more expensive than the sense minutes. I mean, that surprised me. It would seem to be that it would be easier to just record them and have someone sit there and actually figure out thoughtfully what to say. So, and is it roughly the same, or is it a lot more? How much extra money?
Well, you'd be outsourcing that, wouldn't you?
Maybe, do we have any sense of how much extra money that would be?
I couldn't give you a figure right now, no.
So do you have a figure of what we spend
Yes.
on action minutes, on, I think, sense minutes that we would save if we went to action minutes?
Oh, yeah. We would save, because right now we contract out for our minutes, and so we would not have to contract out if we went to action, because
Yeah, but what would we
already
say,
do that.
50,000, 100,000?
It is around a 50,000.
So it's
Just
50,000.
rough figure, if I can just give you a rough figure, it's about 50,000.
So I'm going to assume that verbatim minutes are not much more. It didn't look like it was much more, but I could be wrong. I'm assuming it's, within that range.
We
But-
do have examples from the PTC,
Right.
verbatim minutes, so we know how much a 3-hour meeting takes.
I can't give you a figure, because
Right,
we
but
didn't
we-
really ever research the cost
We
of
could get-
verbatim minutes.
So I'm with Councilmember Schmidt that the transparency concerns outweigh a $50,000 cost, frankly, given our budget and where we are. I mean, not that $50,000 is not a lot of money, but you outsource this, it's not a lot of staff work, it's a cost like anything else. So I would be, I want to do the minutes, but I want them to be verbatim minutes, not sense minutes. And then I like the system the way it is. I think it's the right system that one council member on a committee can say, I don't agree, and this goes to the full council. I think that you want to have diverse voices. And yes, once in a while it does get abused. But on the whole, I think it's a good thing and it's a better process. And it's, it doesn't allow 3 council members to sort of ram something through on the council. Whereas if somebody's saying no and is voting against their colleagues in this committee, it then makes sense that the whole council should take it up. Because someone who's really involved in the details. And it gives more weight to this notion that when the 4 of us say something, it shouldn't be pulled from consent. Because 4 council members who've really delved into it have gotten it. And it rarely is. I mean, once in a while, but it rarely is. So I think it's a good system. I think that's completely different than 2 council members agendizing something. So that's where I am on this stuff. I didn't forget an issue, did I?
The Friday question.
Oh, the Friday questions. Yes, thank you. So I think that you should basically have to get your questions in by Thursday, if that's what staff wants. I'd even go with Wednesday. I think Friday can then be, because you have 980 Fridays, so that was what I was thinking in my head, that I think it has to be Wednesday, unless we're going to do away with 980 Fridays, because I don't see how it works otherwise.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
You're saying council meeting Monday, I have to have my questions by Wednesday.
That's right.
And I get the packet, the first round of packets, I get Wednesday
earlier.
afternoon.
A week earlier.
Right.
A week early.
You can ask questions at council.
You would
I'm
have
sorry,
a question.
I'm sorry.
You would have
But a
you would
week
have had the
earlier.
packet
Got
for a week.
it.
I mean, I think that's a good compromise, and we can still ask all the questions we want at council. I mean, the whole purpose of getting those questions in is to reduce time at council, and that's clearly not happening anyway.
Yeah, that's worked out well.
So, I mean, the council member questions beforehand. I also think we should have a policy that you should basically ask questions that would be difficult to ask at the council meeting. Because I think a lot of those questions sometimes seem they're asked for political purposes as opposed to this is a difficult question that's going to take staff some thought and time, and they may not have the staff member there who wants it. So that is my only concern on that. I do, however, think that a council member, because that was the other thing, that you should be able to pull an item at the council meeting if you want. And the reason for that is people may come and speak and may give a good reason of why it should be pulled, and then we may or may not pull it. And so I think that we have to have the ability to pull it up until the last minute. I know that's difficult on staff, but it can always be rescheduled. All right, now I think I'm done.
It must be my turn.
It is your turn.
I'll go in reverse order. The artery and
Screw my notes up.
also to start with one of the easiest. I agree with the comments made so far on the 3-1 votes. I think the present procedure is fine. I even wonder, since this wasn't brought up by a council member and sort of a staff initiative, I wonder whether it even goes to the council.
I don't think it should.
It doesn't need to. It just is a potential idea.
I haven't heard any council members speak in favor of it. Well, maybe Gail will, but
No.
The next one, I think, is council member questions. And I think that this whole process needs to be re-examined. I think, my actions are consistent with it. I am not one who sends in very many. I may send in the least number of requests for written answers, because I think there's an educational process for the whole public when questions are put at the council meetings. And I'm not sure there's any time saving. It takes most of us more time to write an answer than it does to speak an answer. Sometimes I will tell council members, the staff in advance what questions I'm going to ask. But I think the public hears it much better than it does in seeing written answers from staff that are only distributed frequently right at the places or mid-afternoon on Mondays. So I think that quite frequently, far more than not, the public is not informed by the answers to written questions. So
Are you advocating doing away with them?
no, I'm not advocating doing away with them, but there's been a preference of staff for written questions, and frankly, I think it's misguided. I think that we don't save money, we don't save time, and I think the public is less educated about the process.
May I respond? I think you raised a good question. So we were trying to focus on just a direct reaction to shifting the schedule to stay with the effectiveness of responding to questions, but I think you raise a really good point. I personally, we haven't measured this, but just intuitively, my own experience is that answering questions in advance does not. It just adds work. It's duplicative work, and it doesn't reduce. Separate from what you're saying, Councilmember Klein, which is it's more obvious to the public what the question is and what the answer is in the moment than somebody saying, holding up a piece of paper even and saying, well, the staff said this, and people are saying, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. But I think the basic original idea was if you send some answers in advance, that would preclude those kinds of questions being answered. And I think just as often it just lets people double down on the questions that they might want to ask, and we're doing twice as much. So I personally think that it would be an improvement to just sort of say, let's deal with this at the meetings. Because again, even if we do it on another, believe it or not, it takes the current situation right now on Monday requires a lot of coordination and scurrying around to answer these questions. I'm sure it takes 2 full-time people. If you added up all the hours just to answer those questions, and there is, the meetings aren't getting out at 9:30 or anything like that because of the questions. So I'd certainly entertain removing that. Yeah. Actually, I think the staff would be happy.
I want to go back to the other one where I agree with I think both of my previous colleagues, and that is I would not change the process on pulling things from consent or setting some time limit on it, And I think Councilmember Scharf stated it eloquently, but I would just add that quite frequently, and this is getting into the 2-week packet as well, members of the public are still not going to read the relevant packet until the weekend before the meeting. Maybe some will start 10 days in advance, but just like when we were in college, when do you do the paper? You do the paper the night before. Yeah, that really great A-plus student did turn his paper in a week in advance, but that was the outlier. So
That was you, Councilmember Klein, right?
You knew me then. Good luck. So I want to, if some member of the public comes up on Monday morning and said, gee, I read this over the weekend, and I think that there's a problem with a particular consent item, I think that we still want to be able to take that off consent, and I think that's a more likely than not occasion to happen. I don't have any problem at all with the packet coming out 2 weeks in advance. I think people will adjust to this. In addition to having different colored paper, maybe we ought to number agenda items 1 through 1,000 rather than to keep them rotating, so that people see that you can have some confusion between item number 1. This is item number 1 this week. This is item number 1 next week. Not going to be so much confusion if the next week starts with item number 20.
Plus, we'll get to see how many things we actually
Yeah,
do
exactly,
in a year.
right.
It'll be
There you
astounding.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe I don't know where you start over.
We're going to use Roman numerals also.
Then change the agenda. Then change the agenda order and all sorts of things. Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine to do it primarily because certain percentage of the pub, our interested public, wants it. Okay, fine. I still think you're going to find that the majority of people are only going to really read the relevant agenda the last few days before the council meeting, unless it's one of these really, really hot issues. And those do come up every year, inevitably, but I think by and large we're still going to see people respond just in the last few days. So we get to the hard one, then...
Can I just respond to this one just real quickly? I want to go back to this as it relates to the supplemental reports. What our concern is this, that the council members have a packet out a week in advance, and then you have a council meeting, not on that item. And during council member comments or things like that, the council member says, you know, I see comments from last week. A lot of people have been raising some questions about this, and I'd like the staff to sort of respond to that and send out some supplemental information in advance of next week's meeting as a result of that. What we just want to be very clear is we're saying with the basic process we have right now with an earlier release, but we are not going to be doing interim updates to the upcoming thing in response to council members asking us questions. Because again, I think it'll be just like the...
So you want that in the policies, right?
Yes. It'll be just like your point, Larry, about the last-minute aspect of it. So if we answer stuff even in advance, there will still be more questions that will come at the end, and we've done an interim report. Now, I don't want to, by us doing this, we can't increase the amount of work preparation we're doing for a council meeting. We're just increasing the amount of time the public has to read this stuff.
Well, I understand that problem. It's one you and I have talked about from time to time in a little different sense. Councilmember X makes that request. I think there's a problem to it. You have, first of all, that's one council member. Mm-hmm. It is not an action of the council. Our rule is that a council member can ask a question as long as it doesn't take up to more than an hour's worth of staff time, right? And you need, and I think that your staff leans over backward and evades that rule because it wants to be compliant with an individual council member's request. And I think that the answer may be, let's go back to that rule. If you make a request like that in the midweek process, we're going to treat it subject to the 1 hour rule, and the full council can't really act on it because it's not an agenda item.
Okay.
So I don't think that's true. I think I've been hearing, just to point of order, I think Molly has told us, that's why I think that that's not a agendized issue that's setting And maybe that's over that line,
Be a little different.
that you want staff to come back and do more work on, or you want them to do so. That's different in your view.
I think it is. So the Brown Act exception, Councilmember Sharp, is with respect to new topics that the body wants to place onto a future agenda. And this is more like, hey, I looked at this report, I think it's deficient in this or that way, I'd like more information. It's more about the substance of an item, so my sense
Okay,
of
good.
it is,
I'm
yes.
glad it is.
Okay, the dollar.
Minutes?
Minutes. Maybe Mr. Borak can remember, but it seems to me the council used to have verbatim minutes. What, do you remember, Herb?
Well, I can speak. I submitted a card, and I don't want to take my time
But you-
out of that. But,
Why don't you just answer the question,
okay,
and then we'll come back.
The question I recall is that we had sense minutes when Gloria Young was clerk, and she came with a recommendation that the council approved to save money by having them to be less extensive. And I called them at that point nonsense minutes. They weren't sense minutes anymore. So what we have now is less than what we had before. I can't go back to 1950 well, my recollection is, in terms of the council, that for the time that I was paying attention, is that they've been sense minutes, but in the past they've been more expensive sense minutes.
Well,
And in both the terms of the council and the Planning Commission, Utilities Advisory Commission, the quality varies depending on how much money you want to spend on it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Well, I think the last point is really key. I'm not sure whether back in the 80s, we had, I thought maybe they weren't verbatim. Certainly they were longer than they are now. And I don't know what sense plus minutes are as compared to verbatim, but I think that Councilmember Sharp may be optimistic when he thinks that this is a $50,000 item. From sense minutes to verbatim. That does mean, of course, stenographer and you've had more depositions than I. They don't come cheap.
They don't come cheap. But we don't need a certified court reporter to do it either.
Oh, I think you do.
But it could be from a recording. That's how most
Sorry?
verbatim minutes here are done by recording.
Does the
No, but you
PTC
still
have a
need
court
somebody-
reporter in the room?
you don't need
Is the
no.
recording sent out to be transcribed?
Planning and Transportation Commission sends it out to be transcribed. They do not have a court reporter.
Yeah.
Well, who is the person who transcribes them and what's her qualifications?
It probably is a court reporter.
Yeah, I think it's the same as a court reporter. You still got to be able to go extremely fast, whether it's on a recording or there in person.
I'm told by the assistant city clerk that it's the same firm we use. They're just doing sense for us, and they're doing verbatim. They are not court reporters.
Okay, but, well, then you ought to be able to give a quote very quickly. So we can have an idea of what we're talking about. I'm also worried about the time delay. Obviously, the verbatim are going to take a while, and council frequently wants to have an item come back in a week or 2 weeks or something like that, and I don't know if they will do that if you have verbatim. I'm not ready to decide, but I'm also very sensitive to Molly's statement that what we have now may get us into legal trouble. So to me, it's either just the action minutes or going to verbatim, and I think we really have to look at how much we're willing to spend on that and how quickly we want things. Because I'm quite sure that if we're willing to spend money, we can have the minutes done the next day.
Well, of course you could.
Yeah, court reporters do turn the depositions out
That day.
And the cost would go up substantially.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that.
Right. Yes.
So I think we need to have an array of expenditures and on a time scale.
So, just to jump in on that point, if we want a particular item to come back, it could just be the conversation of that particular item that we expedite, and that may not be that expensive depending on how much time. Or we could decide that it's so important to get it back that we can do action minutes on that issue because it's so important to move forward. We don't have to lock ourselves in to always do something there.
Well, I think you're going to be subject to criticism if you do action minutes.
Yeah, that's probably
people
true.
would say, oh, you didn't want to have all the, anyway, you know the argument. But I think we need more data rather than just guessing as to what the costs are going to be. So I think that it's
Okay.
and then the time factor. So we want to hear from the public before we have motions.
That's what I was going to do, because I haven't
But you
spoken yet.
have- you're
But
turn.
I would say, yes, we want to hear from the public, then I'll speak, and then we'll finish this up. Okay, Fred Balin, followed by Herb Borat.
I get this taller. All right, it's good. It's very good that this is before you. But there should be no reduction in current services. In fact, they need to be expanded. You cannot get rid of the sense minutes unless you go to a full transcript. Video doesn't do it. It's a wonderful resource, but you won't have it if an item comes back to you. The public doesn't have it. There's no record. You don't have control over the Media Center archives. What if they're bought out? We have no history anymore. The issue of council comments or staff responses to council questions, that is the result of a lawsuit, I believe, with the San Jose Mercury News group, together with the city, an agreement that the city had to make public responses to the city. It's in your policies and procedures. Go look at the history. It is in there. And we need to not only honor that, but Mr. Scharf is on the right point. We need to get the questions in earlier so the public can see the responses beforehand. Right now, there's been nothing posted on the council comments, on the responses on the website since the end of June. Now, if we get the packets out earlier, a week earlier, and people can send their comments in earlier, and by Friday the staff has them and has responded by the end of the day or earlier, then we all have the weekend to see what staff has said. The whole concept there of asking questions to staff is to have a more informed and efficient discussion at the actual meeting. So make sure you get any clarifying questions out there so staff answers them. We don't have to waste time at the meeting. With regard to staff reports, having two sets, in a sense, there's really no substantive change. It's the same number of staff reports that go out. It's the same number of agendas. So we'll have logistic issues, we'll have timing, we'll have transition, but it's really going to be the same amount of work in some capacity. Problems? Well, if we get more letters from the public, great. If you get the packet earlier, you should read it earlier, and you should respond before the weekend, and we shouldn't go under an assumption that everybody's going to do it at the last minute. That's not the process here. It's to get early release so people read them, get your comments into the council, get council questions into the staff, get them responded to. Clerk's office has done a very good job incrementally improving what we have over the years, starting from where the very first agenda was put online, to all the staff reports and attachments complete, to having every letter that goes into the public now available in the packet. Those are now pretty much PDF searchable, so you can start looking for names. Hey, what did Herb write this week? And I can just find it with a search. We have the development department posting their plans on there so you can see the entire size. So let's keep it going. All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Price. We didn't have these questions 15 years ago before the last two city managers. A lot of the changes in process and procedure, how the council operates, and the relationship with staff and with the public has changed at the initiation of recommendations from these two city managers. The question on sense minutes, Arthur Keller's communication to you, I think, summarizes why we need them, if that's what we're going to have instead of the wait a minute. Councilman Klein recalls that previous sense minutes were more extensive. You may want to take a look at those sense minutes You may want to take a look at the quality of the verbatim minutes of the Planning Commission when Ms. Slocum attended meetings and prepared them before there were numerous changes as to what the staff or contractors were doing them without attending the meetings. The Utility Advisory Commission used to have an executive summary prepared by staff, so you did not have to go to the verbatim minutes unless you wanted to. When the staffing changed, they refused to do it, so the vice chair did it. And when Mr. Dawes became vice chair, he refused to do it. So there's no more executive summary for UAC. In terms of the number of votes from committee, 15 years ago, any consent item can be removed by one council member. All planning items had public hearings. All referrals to standing committees were from the council. So no one had to go to a dictionary or a book of synonyms to determine whether a particular item had to be sent back to the council. They were a referral from the council. They weren't referrals from staff, such as the item on the lease between Stanford, the city, and DTA, which was on this committee's agenda, I believe at the end of March, I got the right month. You didn't have a quorum because Mr. Scharf wasn't here and Mr. Klein was in conflict. It disappeared from your agenda. You said it's going to be on the next meeting, and the meeting was then canceled. But if the council controls its own standing committees instead of the staff, that's a different process. And all committee items were not on consent. And all those councils didn't have a problem with not having enough time, not having direct reports. They met 4 meetings, Monday meetings, one of which was study sessions, so they didn't take up time. They didn't have a big vacation for everybody during the summer or at the end of the year. So it's all these procedures that have been changed in the past 15 years that is the problem. I think if you take a look at how
you could wind it up, please.
Have resources assigned for staff, you can get the minutes in the proper form that you want. And as far as producing staff reports on short order, you will recall on the energy compost issue that the staff had prepared extensive staff report with the recommendation. Somehow, over a weekend, they were able to prepare a completely different recommendation without any direction from the council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll respond to the different elements here. I did want to make a quick comment related to what Mr. Borak said about the VTA issue and the Stanford and the city. I have been involved and talked to the city manager and VTA and Stanford about this several times in terms of scheduling of the item. So council members have been involved in the scheduling of that item. It didn't just disappear. It's gotten a little more complicated, and not all the parties have common agreement on the issues at hand, and it will come forward to the city council. I don't know when. Okay, so thanks to the staff for all the comments and all the hard work for this staff report. Yes, I'm in favor of the early packet. I think that's prudent. I am trusting that people will be able to handle this, not only the council members, but the staff and the community. And the whole color issue, et cetera, that I leave it up to you for the detail. As long as those who get it by digital, it's very clear too, because you can still get totally confused that way, as you know. So the questions of staff, I would say I probably ask as few questions or fewer than you do questions of staff in advance, just to clarify that. But I think getting questions from city council members is appropriate. I do feel, though, giving staff time to respond to them is really critical. So I like the Friday deadline. So then Thursday night or whatever. I won't get into the detail there, so that you have time to work on those. I'm not convinced it will make it easier for the meetings, because no matter what people have asked, they'll ask it differently or they'll ask new questions. I don't know that there's a way around it, but I would be uncomfortable in removing that option for city council members. Action minutes, sense minutes, verbatim. kind of where Councilmember Klein is on this. I think I want to see more information about the time and the cost. I think my inclination at this moment is a cents plus minutes. It's sort of something a little more than we have now, but not going to verbatim. I'm not convinced that we need that kind of detail plus cost information, etc. Also, I think you will fell fewer trees if we have cents plus minutes instead of verbatim. Because when I think of the amount of paper that we utilize all the time, that causes me some concern.
Could you explain what cents plus minutes means?
The cents plus minutes would be, was referenced here in a couple of conversations.
But we have no idea what it means.
It's a little more detailed than we have now. There are other communities that do that, or is it hard to define?
I don't know of any other community. I mean, it's action, it's sense, or it's verbatim. I mean, sense plus I think Molly and Jim are going to have just as much concerns because it's still looking at what people said and reframing it, because otherwise you're doing verbatim.
Right.
If you want to get the total accuracy, you need to go to verbatim, word for word.
Yeah.
It's just...
Okay, so I guess it would be hard to define that. But I'm uncertain where I fall on that. I would like a little more information. I like the current practice we have in terms of, the colleagues' memo, what's required, taking things off consent, and the issue of going through standing committees. I don't think there's a need to align all of those. Each of those actions are slightly different, and there are lots of ways in which council members can be engaged in terms of how the agenda is formed, what items go to consent, what items go to the action items. So those are my general comments. Again, thank you for all the work on this. I think there are a lot of good ideas here, and it'll be interesting to see what ultimately we do and the city council does as a whole.
Before you if you're going to get to your motion and your specific direction, just if I could make a couple of comments. I think when it would be good is when there's criticism being offered to modulate that with acknowledgement of changes and improvements that have made, which are voluminous, that we've done over the years. And I don't think anybody over the past 20 years would argue that there was more contact and interaction between anybody in society than there is today. With the advance of email and the internet, the volume of exchanges that are going on every day, almost instantaneously, is dramatically different than it was 20 years ago. I worked 20 years ago. I know what the pace was. So the council and the staff and everybody, there's way more interconnections, and we're all better for it. There's more committees. Just even in the time that I've been there, a significant increase, not only committees, but in the intensity and effectiveness of committees. Policy and Services 4 or 5 years ago was dealt nowhere near with the volume of issues that it is, in addition to the other standing committees. The council's working harder than ever and in more open sessions, in my view, than ever before. And the issues we're talking about here today, the main issue really is, yes, the staff responding to the council's interests and responding to the public about how could we get this information out even earlier, it is not a return to an earlier practice as far as I understand. This is an improvement and an enhancement of what it is that we do. And then lastly, the issue of questions, I do want to just clarify, Mr. Balin is correct. There is a requirement to be sure that questions that come from the public to the council are distributed and shared publicly, and that would remain unchanged. And the issue of if we get these questions from council related to the agenda, we're also required to be sure that we do publish them. That's a little bit different from whether or not the council wants to have a practice of submitting questions in advance or doing it at the meeting. You guys have argued both sides of it. We've made our case on it. And if you decide to continue with the questions, we do appreciate the fact that we have the opportunity to ensure that we're as thoughtful as can be in our responses. And I appreciate Councilmember Scharf's reality check that the Wednesday or Thursday is more effective if we're going to keep that than even the Friday suggestion that we made. And everything else we put forward was just in the spirit of identifying ways to try to ensure that your meetings can be as efficient as possible, but you've also acknowledged that participation in democracy isn't always just about efficiency, and there are reasons that you want to keep some of the current practices that you have. And I just want to say we're grateful and thankful for the ability to have a kind of conversation with the committee like this, and we certainly will follow through on whatever motions and directions you issue to us today. I think we would say that. Thank you.
Councilmember Schmidt?
Well, if I could make a motion, I move that we send on to council approval for the early release, that we send on to the council.
Wait, are we breaking them up? That was your original decision, or do you want to just... I mean, I'm fine either way.
I will try and do them all.
Okay, all right. Okay.
That we recommend that council member questions come on Thursday.
Could I jump in and say council member questions on where a request is that there be a written response? Well, I guess there has to be a written response.
Right. When we get those questions related to items on the agenda, we have
requiring
to provide a written response, and that is provided to the public.
Yeah. And that we ask staff to come back with more data on the cost of cents and other minute options.
I mean, cost and sense and verbatim and action, all three, right?
Yeah. And I am leaving off the idea of having two members to get to action, and that it takes you need to vote at items for the council before the Monday. Those are not part of the motion.
Okay, I'll second that bit. I want to have an amendment, if it's all right. I am very concerned that close of business Thursday is the wrong date because of 980 Fridays. And I think it should be close of business Wednesday. Because if it's a 980 Friday, you're back to Monday.
Yeah,
so I would just ask that we change it to close of business Wednesday. So Thursday morning, staff can get going on this and get it done.
And I'd like the understanding that there could be some situations where some questions do trail. They don't automatically come out on Thursday. I mean, we'll do our best. But there are some times that, if somebody's out or we need to do it, we would certainly have them out by Monday morning, rather than in the evening. Or sometimes even over the weekend. I'm sorry.
Okay, willing to accept that.
Okay, great.
Could I add one clarification? I do want to be clear, and maybe it's just to be allowed when we write the staff report. And this does deal with this issue of a supplemental staff report. That we do not typically issue supplemental staff reports now.
I'm fine.
The only time we've done it typically is if we've got a mistake or an issue, you know what I mean, or some change that we've noticed that we want to make sure we correct. And we do not want to be writing more reports for the same item just because something is out in the arena earlier, and council members might hear chatter or questions from the community and somehow want us to try to head that off. You have the opportunity to ask some questions, but we can't get in the practice of writing more reports than we have right now. I will tell you right now, it's a newsroom, it's a crazy newsroom environment putting out your packet. It's crazy. And we ought to sit down and quantify what it takes to produce this. But I would say if we can stay with what we have now and serve the public better, we're absolutely fine with that. But we can't pretend that we can, in this process, increase the amount of work we do for the same agenda by 25 or 50% by doing supplementals. Just, it's not feasible.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
I noted at our last council meeting, we've done this several times, there was a motion to not act on something, but to ask you to come back soon, next week or the week after, with one new piece of information. Does the early packet date mean that we're always adding another week on that? Or could there be a comeback on an item that is already
That's a great point.
on the, already a staff report with some modification in a week or two?
So, I think once you set up a procedure there and the clerk has worked these timeframes through, it's going to apply to everybody. And it will also apply to council members who are looking at colleagues' memos. Sometimes council members are finalizing those, up to very close to the actual packet deadline. And this will mean not 5 days before a meeting, but 15 days or whatever the number is. That's not right, 10 or 12 or whatever. I don't think the clerk's office can cope with a different set of requirements.
So it might be a change in council dealing with it, come back with new information. We should be aware of that.
I think we'll figure that out as we
Yeah,
go along.
you'll recall that the agenda that you're hoping to hop onto, the packet will already be out.
Right, so we have to get our act together a lot earlier too. Yeah.
So when you're at the Monday meeting thinking, I want to add something to next week's, that agenda is already out to the public.
Okay.
All right, I'll speak to my second.
Okay.
I think this is really good motion. I think, and I'm pleased that we're doing all these. I did have one concern. You're supposed to come back with us with the costs of the sense versus the action versus verbatim. I don't want to delay the rest of this. And I guess I wanted to get a sense from my colleagues of how do you want to handle this. I mean, what we could do is we could send all the rest of this out on consent, because we all are going to vote for it, is what I'm guessing. And those...
You should never guess that.
And those three issues would then go on consent and we'd be done. And then they come back to us and we make a recommendation on sense versus verbatim versus... And then we have that as a separate item that either... And that's what I would suggest, and I want to know...
Oh, no, my motion was to come back to policy and services.
That's what he said.
No, that's what I'm saying. It comes back to policy and services.
But the other two could go to...
That's what I'm trying to say, is that everything that gets split off.
Bifurcating it.
That's bifurcated. Everything else gets split off, but just that one issue comes back. And so we don't delay the packet release. We don't delay the rest of the items.
That's what I thought he noted.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I
it wasn't
didn't understand
necessarily
that.
clear at first. So that is the understanding of what we're voting on, that one piece will get more information. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Okay, thank you.
Glad to see my assumption was correct for a change.
Yeah, right.
You never know.
I wasn't sure myself. Okay.
Thank you for the comparative data that you guys selected.
Oh, okay.
So when are we going to get the upgrades in this place? I feel a little hot, like the AC's not working. I think I'm dying here.
Well, there's a refrigerator over there. We opened the door.
Maybe just open the door.
Have the fan going in there to blow.
I realize it's probably 90 degrees in here. What's going on?
We're going to look over briefly the status of items for policy and services. Thank you to Cash for preparing this. This includes the 5 or 6 items that were referred to policy and services over the last couple of weeks. So if you want to take a quick look at this, and then I wanted to make a couple comments about one of them. Let's see here. Okay, so move right into the yellow, which is the October meeting. We have 2 meetings in October 14th and October 21st.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Status I'm sorry, I can't read this?
Status of items.
Oh, status of items, I'm sorry. Okay, just one second. on the 21st, there's going to be a lot of activity there.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Yeah, it really is. And, I would just say that I haven't had a chance to talk to the chair about this, but we both have this issue of discussions with the service-providing community. For example, talked to Avenidas and Stanford hospitals, and also an update on Project Safety Net. And I've had some interesting conversations on both of those issues with some various staff folks. And our thinking was that actually to sort of separate these, not all in the same meeting in a way. And it was mostly just a sort of volume issue. I mean, imagining that there's a long discussion as it relates to the Project Safety Net piece, and then the hospitals issue. And then my own sense is I would think you'd want to still have all of those discussions before you're even in a position to then sort of say, what are the real recommendations you want to start making about how you move forward? I mean, my sense is that there's enough to this that you're going to take more than one meeting to work through this Stanford funds issue. And I partly bring that up because you just have a lot of stuff already on that meeting.
Any reason not to start the meeting earlier?
Well, that's one thing. I did want to speak to this briefly. Originally, I thought we had suggested that the update on Project Safety Net goes directly. The next step would be City Council. Is that correct? Not here. But one of the complicating factors now is the lead person on Project Safety Net resigned. So you've had sort of an interim situation for over a year where Minka's done yo person's work on this. And then you had a staff member in that position who has since resigned. So it's a kind of it's a challenging time for Project Safety Net. But I wanted to get from the committee an understanding, was the request for Project Safety Net update going directly to council or back to us? I thought that we had requested it go directly to council.
Well, if I just might add to that, I think that as part of the point that you were making about the current condition on Project Safety Net, know that there have been some meetings with the leadership group in Project Safety Net, which includes a number of the different service providers. And I think there's some interesting dialogue that's beginning to emerge about how to think about Project Safety Net going forward. And what I hope I recall the committee's conversation right the last time, to the extent that these were sort of rhetorical questions maybe, but there was a question about, we've earmarked $2 million for Project Safety Net, but is that the right number? Should it ever be less, or should it actually be more? And so that I think there's an interconnect between the Project Safety Net question and other potential uses of the health and safety fund. So my sense is the committee would be better served to be sure you heard Project Safety Net yourself in conjunction with these before it went to council.
Do people concur with that?
Yeah.
Because there is that relationship in terms of really being able to make a sensible set of recommendations that relate to these different programs. Now, another comment I wanted to make about the guiding principles, mission, and objectives. I was going to make the suggestion that I and a member of this committee work on the guiding principles, mission, and objectives for the health and safety funds as a draft to begin discussion, rather than coming in here and having the staff prepare that, and we go back and forth. And if the committee agrees, I'm willing to do that if people think that makes sense.
Wait, why would that make sense?
Because
you can always do that. Why do you need a committee to tell you that you can do that?
Well, I wanted to, offer to take the lead on the first draft of this so that we can actually have a discussion related to a document that's drafted, related to guiding principles, mission, and objectives for the use of this particular fund.
But why wouldn't staff do it?
I'm interested in doing it, and I'm willing to do it, and I think given that the staff has so many other items right now and going on, I think this would facilitate moving this forward a little bit more quickly. This is unorthodox, so be it. It's my offer to help push this along for discussion.
I think it sets a bad precedent, I think that the staff prepares lots and lots of things for us, and I don't want to start encouraging council members to really take over a staff role. I think staff want to come up with its principles. If you want to do something different, that's your prerogative as it is of any of the rest of us. But I think that we all depend on staff at least to give us a start, and I think this should be no different.
And you clearly have the right, as a council member, to prepare whatever you want and hand it out to your colleagues at the meeting and say, this is how I think it should be. So,
Gail had one important notion in there, though, of focusing on guiding principles of a structure, maybe a short document that is, guiding principles. I think would be a good starting point.
So, well, I would just like to add, I thought the committee had a really robust discussion the last time about this, and you raised a lot of important questions. About the pace of funding, the sustainability of the funds, all of those things. For me, it's hard to see how if we're really ready to discuss guiding principles, mission, and objectives, and finalize that in advance of this next round of discussion from these different stakeholder groups, in some sense, to sort of get some of their thinking. You run the risk of sort of anticipating something that somehow then they're going to come and say, well, we agree or we disagree, versus sort of having those discussions and then starting to also then talk about, okay, how does that inform? We have more information and knowledge about how some potential users are thinking about this. Then it informs your guiding principles, mission, and objectives. Because I just think that there's some interesting conversations starting to take place since you guys had your conversation here, and these things that I come back to the fact that I think you're going to have at least this subject on 2 committee agendas.
Right, I agree. In no way was I assuming mission, principle, trends, and all could be handled in one meeting. The issue was trying to get the cadence going here in October. So, all right, so I will withdraw my offer. And, okay, so at this point then...
well, I don't think you need to withdraw your offer. I think what's really helpful is if you want to put something together, if you're thinking about it, but I think staff should do something as well. I'm interested in what you have to say, so...
Right, but it would be sort of silly for me to spend time doing all this, and they're doing something that may or may not even be related, and, that might not help. And I'll write down some issues I think that are still important for us to consider. Okay, so given all these other items on the 21st, then, do people feel we may not get through all of these on the 21st?
I want to start earlier.
Well,
okay, so one item was to start earlier, and 6, you're talking 5?
I was thinking 5. I don't think
Is
any of us
5
have a
reasonable
problem
for
with that.
people?
No.
Okay, so let's do that, if that's okay. 5 on 10/21/14. And the issue of the health and safety needs in the community, I think an observation would be it might be useful for staff to work with them in terms of having a similar way in which they each bring information forward, so that Avanitas and Stanford are talking, and they will talk, but there's some understanding of the kinds of things, so that they're both operating with some understanding of what would be useful as an information report. Okay, so my comments about that. people have any other comments on anything on these proposed, the proposed schedule or the items?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get to the two items that say TBT this year. So I don't think it's a problem keeping it on there, but it doesn't look like we're going to get to it.
On the last page?
Yeah.
I think you're right.
And I think that's okay with me. I just not sure. Do you keep them on for tracking, or is this just for this year?
Well, you've already added another item to come back to you, and it's more timely than that. Right?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. That needs to
minutes and
right. That needs to come soon.
Item number 20, the planning department has already indicated that's a major public outreach issue.
Right.
And that really is a 2015 item.
That's what I was thinking.
Right. And the backup, and I don't know if this is desirable or not, depending on the staff's ability to absorb all this, would be to consider another meeting in November or December, but I don't know how people feel about it. I don't know the staff's capacity to consider that in terms of being able to keep moving on these items. So that's a question, but I guess it's something you can think about. So.
And what I might do, Madam Chair, is with your permission, on a few of these items in November and December, to talk with the relevant staff to get a better sense of both what's involved and the timeliness of this, so you might have some flexibility to move some of those things around, so things that clearly have some urgency for you we can't deal with. And I'm not in a position to say it, but it may be that the amendment to the fire code, could move,
right.
And allow time for, to be sure, for example, we take up the sense minutes issue.
Right.
Right. So that one is back on this, the issue of the minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The different styles of minutes and implications. Okay. Okay, any other comments about...
I move for adjournment.
Okay. Okay.
It's 93 degrees in here now.
Huh?
Cord.
I'm sorry. Herb Borak, I'm sorry. Got.
Thank you. I know it's early, so that was
Yeah.
I just wanted to speak on something that was part of the discussion that Chair Price responded to on the previous item, and that was regarding the scheduling of the item of the train vehicle item of the reduced capacities of Stanford to the city, to the ETA. And I understand that staff with the neighborhood council or chair of the committee is setting an agenda. But I believe that once something is on the committee's agenda, the committee determines what happens to that agenda item. And if my memory of the dates is correct, and I previously provided that in summary on my letter about the grand jury report. I believe this committee met on that item on March 25, and for lack of quorum, continued the item to the meeting of April 8th, and that meeting was then canceled. Now, what happens when an item that's on a meeting that the committee said should be on an agenda is then canceled? I don't think that disappears from your status report, and I don't think that automatically someone can decide outside of the committee that it goes to the council at that point, or that it's held up. It still goes on your status report, and it's up to the committee to decide what to do, because it was in the committee's purview to make the decision at that point, once it's on your agenda. So that was my concern with that. And you've had previous status reports that included items that preceded the date of that meeting. So it wasn't a question that suddenly we're having status reports and it was after that item. The previous status reports covered items from the beginning of the year. So that was my concern as to what happens when the committee makes a decision to do something and how that's implemented. And I realize, practically you can say, well, they scheduled it for this agenda item and someone canceled that meeting, therefore that item is no longer in the committee's status. Well, I don't think so. I think it's still up to the committee. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you would like us to add a status report on this particular item on your next one of these lists, we can, and you would be in a position to be able to issue any direction that you would want on that as a committee and clarify.
All right.
Okay.
Can I talk to you about that one? You got to go upstairs.
Yeah, the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all
I
for
have
the
a
meeting.
question. Why would, my suggestion to work on this with another firm be any different than all the times I've seen in policy and services and other places where a chair and a member of the committee works on a draft of something
Working on something that's been approved by the club.
as a start, not creating the first document, but responding to what staff has drafted. Okay. Yeah, because I'm saying they went,
Yep,
I've seen that several times, but
that's the difference.
what's the difference? Okay. It's just trying to move things along. I know it's unorthodox and it doesn't set a good precedent.
You would have Karen Holman with everything.
Oh, well. So, anyway. My concern is that, well, anyway, I know Stanford Hospital and Sherry, she's going to go on vacation. We need the input now. And I may talk to them, and then I'm sure they're going to talk to staff, and then we'll figure out how to do it. So, okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm sure you didn't make this public comment. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. I had forgotten. Sometimes, you get caught in the discussion, and
Well, plus when it's adjournment time,
yeah.
it's like it's